Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 5th. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'd like to ask Dave to come and lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At the pleasure of the council, before we begin this evening, I'd like to, Councilman Rodrick would just like to say a couple of things.
If that's okay with the council, consent. I just want to personally say I want to thank the members of the council. I think that all of you are aware that shortly after the holidays, my wife was seriously ill and only recently has started to come along and has been speaking a little bit. And this council, each and every one of you, reached out to me and offered your support and told me that family was first, and I was unable to make that first meeting. And I appreciate the fact that each and every one of you, including the mayor of our city, City Clerk Burnett, you've all reached out to me. Councilwoman Souza, who is a noted RN at Rhode Island Hospital, offered some visitation time with me there and some support and some coffee during those long hours of waiting for during that stressful time. And as my wife said to me today, as I left her, she said, "You missed the meeting already, you better get to work." And she told me to come. So thank you all very much, and I thank those friends and family in the community who've also reached out. It means a lot. I've gotten a little behind the 8 ball, but I'm ready to go. And thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. We wish you for a speedy recovery as well.
Thank you.
That being said, next item, please.
Next item, to approve the consent calendar.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move.
Seconded.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza. Aye. Councilman Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Communications. Karen Zion's Road Races and Events Incorporated, first annual Coyote 5K run, Saturday, June 15th, 2019, start time 9 a.m.
Ms. Zion, please step up to the podium.
So my name is Susan Rancourt. I'm Susan Rancourt. Karen Zinas is my business partner. I have to swear in? No?
You want to swear the witness?
For communication?
Sometimes I get sworn in sometimes.
Okay.
So I'm here on behalf of the Crescent Park Carousel Committee and Sergeant Morato. We are going to be doing the first annual Coyote 5K, which is going to be a fundraiser for the carousel. It's going to be held on June 15th at 9 o'clock in the morning. We have a lovely 5K route planned through Riverside, Savin Point, starting and finishing at the carousel.
Very nice.
Is everything in order, Ms. City Clerk?
Yes, everything is in order.
All right, and everything's clear with the police department as well, as far as path and blocking off entrances or exits or streets or roads or anything to that nature?
I believe they have vetted that out already with the police department for any need of detail.
Yep,
Okay.
we already have the DEM approval. DEM has already approved it because we are part of the bike path for some of the course.
Okay. With that being said, I don't see any issues, and it's definitely not up here for a vote, so I don't see any issues. Council, anyone have any questions, concerns, or anything? Sure, please.
Good evening, everyone. So this idea came about, it's, as Susan mentioned, it's going to be a 5K road race to benefit the carousel. And the idea is that we're hoping that it becomes an annual event. We're hoping to draw interest to that part of Riverside. And I believe it's going to be an excellent family 5K run / fun walk. And interesting enough, the idea wasn't mine, but I took it and I ran with it. No pun intended. And We're calling it a Coyote 5K run. We thought it would be a fun name for it. We're calling the participants road runners, and it's really to benefit the carousel and trying to get that train depot. So it's just one little key component in the bigger picture for the carousel. But we'll do a little bit more postings down the road, but that's the whole idea behind it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, just a question, because I noticed it was under communication. This is going to be run on streets. Are we closing off some streets to do the 5K? Because I think previously, with all other runs throughout the city, there was a vote because it have to be, the police department, I'm sure they have vetted or are vetting it, but it was a vote on the council and not under communication, so I think it might have to be reposted.
So I can answer that. So we're going to keep it, we're not going to block off any roads. The event's going to start from the carousel. We are going to hire police details, correct, to cross at key locations, but the runners, the participants are going to go down Crescent View, down the bike path, which they're going to secure that permit through DEM.
That's already secured.
Come out through Bullocks Point, by Borealis to Bullocks Point. And the only thing that we have to determine is whether or not they're going to loop around Sabin Point or just come right back up Bullocks.
They're going to loop around Sabin Point.
Yeah.
Yep.
And come back, loop around Sabin, come back out to Bullocks and back to the carousel. The good part of this run is that Bullocks Point is used for many road races. It's a nice wide street, but as of right now, there is no blocking off. We don't want to inconvenience any of the neighbors at all.
So what we do is we have 750 cones. We create a coned running lane. So if any of you are familiar with how we run the marathon up through that Bullocks Point, it'll be similar to that. It's a nice wide shoulder. There might be some points where we might have no parking at that time, but a 5K race is over really quickly.
Yeah.
So it'll be a minimal impact on any residents.
However, just to piggyback off the councilwoman, in the past, we've always had a vote on this. I will say that. Mr. Solicitor, will we need to vote on this as well?
So,
because we have until June 15th.
Exactly. So if I can do some research, if we do need a vote, we can put it on an agenda between now and June. But I think you probably needed a vote in the past because we're closing city streets, and because the city streets are being open, it's a public way, so they can use it.
So with that being said, if we can just table this for the next council meeting, put it back on a council meeting, and under Councilman Morato's name on the council, and as a vote.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sounds like a good event.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
And I'd just like to, before we proceed on at this point in time, I'd like to make one comment with reference to, I know there's some people who are probably here for the police ordinance, and they have their questions or concerns or otherwise. That ordinance, by the way, just so people know, if you have to go somewhere, that ordinance will not be voted on this evening, and we'll get into that later. But just so you know, in the event that somebody is here for that reason and that reason only, there will be no vote on that this evening. And with that being said, still, communications in addition to public comment will be open if anybody chooses to speak for or against that. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public comment. Dr. Heather DeSantos, police recruitment.
Good evening. Mr. City Solicitor, let just swear in, please.
Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Dr. Heather Dos Santos. Good evening.
Hello.
I come before you today with the knowledge that there is a discussion that will be had on police recruitment and as well the qualifications for police recruitment. As an educator professional of over 20 years, a current principal, a published author, researcher, a current liaison to the Rhode Island Training School, and a liaison to the Truancy Court in Rhode Island for my school district, I feel that I have a keen insight into a lot of what I see as a very troubled system that affects many individuals. When I learned that an individual who could have a misdemeanor offense as early as age 18 could be disqualified, or would be in the city of East Providence disqualified immediately from even having an opportunity to be considered as a police officer, that was very troubling to me. It was troubling to me because it brings me to my research. Again, as a researcher now published with work that spans several years, there's a host of research that would support, beyond juvenile indiscretion, youthful indiscretion, there's a whole lot to be said sometimes about indiscretions, and behavioral infractions that at times actually have roots as early as school, grade school, and some of these challenges follow students in a cyclical fashion throughout their schooling experiences, and oftentimes, in my experience, lead directly to their first charge at 18. With that being said, I feel that it's important to recognize that, for example, a misdemeanor that could be committed by an individual who is very young in age or perhaps older in age should not define who they are as an individual for the rest of their life. And I think equally important is the research that stands in support of the harmful effects that one simple decision such as this could have on that individual. I think about the doors that immediately close for that individual, the opportunities that immediately fade for this individual in terms of their ability to successfully reintegrate into society, at times successfully gain employment in a field that they might be highly interested in, and more importantly, the opportunity for this individual to demonstrate their growth as a citizen and as a contributing member of society. I applaud the mayor, the new mayor of East Providence, and anyone who is willing to consider the importance of really taking another look at such a harmful policy. And I would also ask and remind you that you consider that for an individual who could be highly qualified for a position within the city, you narrow the pool and disqualify so many applicants who might be your best candidate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just keep in mind, folks, and I should have mentioned this earlier and prior to, in public comment, we have a 3-minute limit up here, and just be mindful. I don't want to stop anyone in the middle of their speech, and I really don't want to time anyone as well, but I just want you to be just be aware of there is a 3-minute limit when you come up to speak in public comment. Thank you. Next person, please.
Kathy Santos, Police Recruitment.
That's the city solicitor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name for the record, please.
Kathleen Santos, 4 Thurston Street, Riverside.
Thank you.
I'm going to just send this down, send it to the council people and send it on down. Just a few clippings, some information and such. I think it's very important that we not dumb down our police department. I think that having education is pretty important in this day and age especially. And I would like to see, some sort of college in it, some sort of law enforcement, classes, mental health and such. I kind of, this is a sore spot for me as I had a brother that 12 years ago was shot to death because of his mental illness in his own home, because obviously they didn't know between what he was, if he had a knife or if he had a cordless phone, which was a cordless phone. And, we have, I have gone through, and my daughter, who's a research person, she has gone through a lot of stuff. My sister, who's in mental health for over 30 years, we've done a lot of research on the subject and such, and we really, I've talked to a lot of people who feel that, you don't want to dumb it down. You want them, and you want everybody to go home. You want the person who's having a problem go home. You want the police to go home. I have relatives in the police around the country, and I would be so sad if something ever happened to them. But I'm also, we have to, there's a lot of people with a lot of problems. You have veterans that come home, mentally wounded. You have, people with whatever's going on in their life with problems, and you need to make sure you got an educated bunch of people. I'm not going to, somebody who shoplifted a pack of gum at 15, I'm not going to hold something like that against somebody. But, I probably not want somebody who had a fight with somebody at a bar at 18 years old, or, set fire to a dumpster at URI because the Pats won. There might be, that's a little more than, someone's indiscretion, and, there's consequences in life. If you're 18, 19 years old and you get caught, with drugs in your car or something like that, there's probably going to be a problem, or drunk driving, or whatever it is, or, stealing, half a cow out of a meat market. There's going to be an issue. So, I don't think we need to dumb down. I think we need to, make sure that people come with the skills. I mean, we have a nurse here that I wouldn't want to touch me with a 10-foot pole if she didn't have the skills to, change my IV or change my dressing or, assist. Okay?
30 seconds.
Okay. So please, don't dumb down, the police department. I'm sure that the police would, be pretty sad to have a problem, with not enough education, and, they got the guy, shooting them by mistake, because that also happened in North Kingston just a few short years ago with that Paul Kilcline young man who was shot to death. So please, take that all into consideration. I've got tons more papers if you want to see them, but I figured, I don't need to, ruin your eyeballs all in one night. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Scott Sanzo, police qualifications.
Okay. Next person, please.
Ona Moniz, police requirements. Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Anna Moniz John.
Thank you.
Good evening, and I'm here for the same topic, obviously, even though it's going to be deferred. I'd like to try to re-emphasize the importance of trying to be more inclusive. The city has worked for many years trying to do a good job, particularly with police and fire. It is critical that we expand the pool, not shrink the pool. It is common across the state of Rhode Island and the United States, where education is a part of an experience coupled together, make a good match. It is not just an education. You can go to the finest college, or you can come in here with a culinary degree and be allowed to take this test, and someone with a lot of experience, life experience, someone could have been a security officer. I mean, we really have to do that E&A. And it's just really not a good thing to exclude people and to think that these little matters don't matter. They mean everything. At one point, this city was charging young people in the playgrounds with loitering. Now, this was our own police department, and everyone thought that was fine. And then when you have these young girls go for a job, and their record comes up loitering, you leave the city, what is loitering? I mean, we have to be aware of ruining people's career before they even get off the ground. It's very important. And the brain doesn't even develop until the age of 26. We can't cut off people's legs. We really need to get good people in. I don't think you would be dumbing down. You would be still looking at everyone individually, and you would look at that combination of education and experience. You can get your degree at recognized colleges with a combination of your work experience. Experience matters. Age does matter in some cases, and in this case it does. You shouldn't hold misdemeanors that people committed when they were 18. Now, if you have this young woman who came before you, who was picked up in our own parks for loitering, And now she comes before us for a job. She's got the education. She has an experience. We can't even look at her. We can't go backwards. I mean, I watched the program last Sunday morning with the state troopers on Jim Vincent's show, and they were talking about the same thing.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. The main point is it's better to look at more people. We have the time to do this in an individual fashion, but if we limit the pool of recruiting, we lose that opportunity, and we're going to lose some real good people. A lot of our people were ended up at Brown University, which was an accredited police department, because we weren't looking at them. We've come a long way. Let's keep going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. Next item, please.
Appointments. George Furtado, Associate Municipal Court Judge.
Council President, members of the council, I put forward before you the name of George Furtado to serve as Associate Municipal Court Judge. George had previously served as 6 years as our Municipal Court Judge. He had indicated that he wanted to retire, but recently we had a scheduling conflict where we needed to call on another municipality to see if we could have a judge step in because our Municipal Court Judge was not available, was away. So when Mr. Furtado heard of the situation, he willingly volunteered to come back and serve as an associate, and he's actually volunteering his time to do that. So
this is a volunteer?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Furtado. At the pleasure of the council, does anyone have any questions at the mayor's request?
Mr. President, it sounds appropriate. The gentleman is going to volunteer his time to the community. He has a track record of having done a good job in the past, and I don't see why we would look the other way. I would move approval.
Okay, we have approval on the floor. A motion
Second.
to approve, seconded by Councilwoman Souza. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Councilman Brito.
Aye. Next item, please. Thank you, Mr. Furtado.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Mr. President, members of the council, I put forward before you the name of Joey Connors to serve as Municipal Court Bailiff. Mr. Connors has served for many years in that capacity and is willing to accept the appointment again.
At the pleasure of the council, does anyone have any questions, concerns, anything they'd like to discuss at this point in time, prior to a vote? Okay.
Mr. President, is Joey Connors here? I know
He is not here, no.
See his mom here. Joey Connors is an icon in East Providence. He has certainly represented what a challenged young man can do since birth, and he's served this community with distinction and pride, and he was a spokesman for Rhode Island Special Olympics, 50-year anniversary on his 50th birthday. Of course, to look at him, he looks like he's 12. He's young and handsome. Without further ado, I would move approval.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Councilman Brito.
Thank you. Mayor?
Mr. President, members of the council, I place before you the name of John Medeiros to serve as Municipal Court Bailiff. Mr. Medeiros has served in that capacity for a few years and continues to serve in that capacity and has accepted the position.
At the pleasure of the council, open up the floor for discussion. Anyone have any questions, concerns, or anything they'd like to talk about at this point in time? With that being said, would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve Mr. Medeiros.
Second that motion.
All right, we have a motion, seconded. Roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Councilman Brito.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for serving. Next item, please.
Council Liaison for School Committee.
So I placed this on the docket because I felt it's important that the school committee and the city council have a good communication between each other. There've been, now at the school, the new high school coming before us, and all the plans that are involved. It's really important that we're kept up to speed and that we have somebody that's a voice on our side of the city at those meetings, and that is informing the community along with us to know what's really going on. And I don't know how everybody feels up here, if anybody was interested. I think that Councilman Cahoon, who has served on the school committee and has done a great job and also oversees the building committee and has worked very diligently, hands-on with that, would suit us the best in this area. So I would put forward Councilman Cahoon as our liaison for the council for the school committee.
Councilman Cahoon, would you like to expand upon that?
Please, the council, I'm proud to serve. I'll be at every one of the building committee meetings. I'll certainly be at most, if not all, the school committee meetings. Happy to carry communication back and forth. Councilwoman Souza, I think it can only benefit. You know that we've had some issues along those lines in the past, so let's do it.
Mr. President, I would second Councilwoman Souza's motion.
I think it's only fair that, considering that you started off, that you see it and follow through with the new build-out of the new school as well.
I guess I'm never going to get free of that.
Not now.
He only receives one pay, though, right? He's not going to get paid, school committee pay.
Okay. Okay, with that being said, we have a motion on the floor here by Councilman Rodriguez. Anyone like to second that motion?
Councilwoman Souza.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Souza, seconded by Councilman Rodriguez. Roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
And Councilman Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Council members, Community Safety and Streetlights by Councilwoman Souza.
So this has been, street lights and community safety kind of go hand in hand, and I know we've had a lot of discussion with the street lights and the LEDs and getting that up and running, and there's been some issues with our contracts, and I know on the docket the mayor's going to come up and talk about where we are in terms of those contract negotiations or where we're not. It has, unfortunately, Ward 1, Ward 4, there's been issues with crime, breaking in cars, pirate porching. I know Councilman, our president, had started a neighborhood watch, I believe. So a couple of the constituents in a neighborhood around Pierce Field have been concerned because there's been a lot of activity in the community that has not been becoming of the neighborhood. So during the Christmas time, obviously it's very common that people have their packages stolen nationwide, and so building a group to watch the neighborhood or to assist would be something that I think Ward 2 is interested in pursuing, much like the rest of the community. So I was looking to find out some information from our council president as to where his neighborhood watch committee has gone or anything that they've implicated that maybe might be useful in other districts.
To be quite frank with you, Councilwoman, I need to get the defibrillator out and resuscitate that. It's been some time since we met, talked, or actually did anything about it, but I will say in my communication with the police department that part of our meetings that we had, I was able to get the actual areas that the police officers, the patrolling officers are able to get their names and contact information for each area of Ward 1. And that's something, again, that I need to really resuscitate and get back into it and start having those meetings again. Okay. But in my follow-up some time ago with the chief, they did provide me with the contact information, the patrol officer, and in addition to that, the times that these officers patrol the areas, and that way I like to make a connection between police and community. So in the event that there is a problem, someone is questionable as to whether or not 911 call the police, what do I call? They can call the officer directly.
Okay. So I think one of the things that we've come up with in discussing a couple of ideas with residents is there are, so being aware, being in the moment of what's going on in our neighborhoods, watching out for our neighbors. We've gotten into a society where we're very narrow in our path, where we're so busy and focused on life that we're not necessarily looking at our surroundings. So being more mindful of your neighbor, your elderly neighbor, maybe a handicapped neighbor, a single mom, or just the children that are in the community or on your streets. I know they've come in other cities, friends and colleagues have used the Ring doorbell where it has a camera and it takes it's a constant feed, especially when there's motions in play. And if you have a few neighbors in the same, on the same street, you really get a good view of the whole street. And that has caught a lot of theft or break-ins and avoided some because people are cognitive of, well, that has a camera on it, so they can see me approaching a vehicle or a household. So something to look into. I will be setting up a meeting with all those who have reached out to me for a community watch program for Ward 2 and their specific areas around Pierce Field, so we can elaborate further on some other ideas. And then the other part of this that I think is really important is the streetlights and that safety. So the city is very dull in color because of the fluorescent nature of the lights. And then with over 900 lights currently off, red-capped, or broken, or not serviced, the city has become increasingly more difficult for our residents who walk, our children that are out, in the winter especially. It gets dark earlier, so children are still out at the parks or walking home from a friend's house or from an after-school activity. So not having adequate lighting in the community is a problem. And I'm hoping that this LED light situation will be taken care of sooner than later. I know everything's a process, and unfortunately, it's puts the burden on us as a community because, again, another fatality happened a month ago with a pedestrian crossing the street. That area is not nicely lit. It has some poor light quality in that area. We do have, thankfully, businesses who have floodlights who shine so that you can see. I mean, there's a reason why parks have bright floodlights so you can see what's going on. It deters theft, it deters violence or just things that you wouldn't do normally if it was in dark. So I think it's important, and I don't know if the mayor, since it's on this discussion, would want to come up and talk about that, if it's the pleasure of the council to give an update on, since this is in the realm of the streetlights, if the pleasure of the council.
Yeah, I have no issue with it, considering that you're up for discussion on this. So
I just think it's important that we know down the pike.
So there's two issues facing the city right now with streetlights. Okay, one of them is the city right now, and a lot of other municipalities are paying for the streetlights on state roads. Okay, now many years, some time back, we started withholding those payments from National Grid so that when we pay our electric bill, we subtract those lights that we have determined to be state roads. Okay, so that is something that our legal department is working on. The second issue is the purchase of the lights from National Grid to allow the city to put the newer style LED lights up. The problem is, according to our legal, Dylan Connolly, who's leading the charge in this, is that National Grid's offer to allow the city to buy the lights violates the law in a number of ways. Okay, first, it requires the city to buy both the city and the state lights. That's part of the agreement. Okay, it allows National Grid to force East Providence to take street lights down whenever National Grid deems fit. National Grid has delayed EP's purchase of the lights because National Grid wants to make money off the delays. National Grid doesn't have the info necessary to calculate cost of purchasing the lights. Some municipalities pay very little or nothing to acquire access to the lights, while East Providence was going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. Even after East Providence purchases the lights, National Grid seeks to control the light use and seeks to stop any other technological devices from being placed on the lights, like Wi-Fi, video cameras, RFID, and other types of equipment. So there has been an action. We joined other communities in a legal action recently, and that action, we hope, from what I understand, is on the verge of coming to an agreement. Probably within the next couple of months. So we hope that we'll have a decision, and that decision has the potential of saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars and giving us more rights to what we can do with the lights.
So what communities are we on
We
board?
joined on with Pawtucket and Cumberland? Pawtucket and Cumberland.
And what is the terms of those agreements?
Well, there is no,
Purchase, is it we're in a suit with them to purchase lights?
you want to talk about it? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So the suit is before the Public Utilities Commission. Basically, the suit alleges that the terms of the Narragansett National Grid is imposing upon cities and towns violates the Municipal Streetlight Act, which is state law. So there's a dispute whether or not their agreements violate that state law. So that's what the suit is about, and that's before the Public Utilities Commission. So if we're successful, a lot of the onerous requirements that the mayor just talked about they won't be able to push them because it will be illegal. So that's what the suit is about.
Pending we win.
Assuming we win, yes.
Assuming we win. Now, do other municipalities have this issue, or is it just these?
No, other municipalities do have the issue, and other municipalities who were first to purchase the lights purchased it under that agreement, and they've got the same type of issues that they're going to be dealing with. So it's something that I think is going to be, in the long run, protecting the citizens of East Providence. The bottom line is, making sure we get the best deal and that we save money. So it's worth the effort to wait a couple of months to see if we get a resolution.
Okay, so in the interim, what do we do about the old 9+100 lights that are currently out, that are dark in the city?
Well, those lights have been out for quite some time. If you have a particular area that's a concern in your district, that's a crime concern, I think we should sit down with the police department and see if we can address that problem. And if we need to reach out to National Grid to replace a light or to activate a light, we will do that if there's an actual concern. We're here to help solve any issues. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, I can tell you that when a constituent called me about a light being out, I requested the poll number, which is what I've always been told, and I relayed that over.
Yeah, I've done that multiple times. It's almost like changing your socks. It's an everyday occurrence. So the bigger picture, I mean, though, that's a small, easy fix, but just looking for an overall. But hopefully, by the end of the year, we'll have something, or the summer.
Okay. Will that be it?
Thank you.
Okay, next item, please.
City of East Providence fiscal budget format. Councilman Morato.
Good evening. So the reason why I put this on the docket, I don't know if anyone has this issue with reading the budget format, our current city budget, but I, for one, I have a hard time following it. And I feel that the format should be where everyone should be able to read it. We shouldn't have to look at line items for, let's say, the library, for example, that takes in some revenue, and a line item 20 pages down the road. I make the reference to having two checkbooks, to balance your own house. One that direct deposit, and the other one where you pay the bills with, and you don't know which one is doing what. So I would like to start this discussion. I mean, budget, we're going to have these budget discussions before you know it. There's not a lot of time, really, in the grand scheme of things. And I just want to know if it's possible to make this budget format simple for everyone to read and understand. Everyone talks about transparency and stuff, but this is one item where our tax dollars, as citizens, we should know where it's going and where it's being spent and followed easily. I don't need to be an accountant to have to read this. So this is something that I've been talking about for a long time, and I would just like to start the dialogue and put that out there. And actually, if maybe we can, possible to call up Malcolm, and maybe he can elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, we don't have him up here. Okay, can we call him out for discussion at this time?
As long as we don't vote.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Good evening.
Welcome.
Welcome. We've had this discussion over a number of years. Actually, the mayor and I talked about this earlier today because he was talking about something that's a little more user-friendly. The limitations we have right now is with the accounting system. We called up Pawtucket earlier today. They have the system they had the system we currently use. They've moved to another one. It is a limited system, and one of the issues we do have is in the budgeting process. Right now, the whole budget is done by myself. It's all done through Excel and linking a bunch of spreadsheets. So we are limited in exactly how we present it. The mayor was hoping to maybe make something a little more robust, a little more user-friendly. And we just talked about that today. But I understand your concerns. It's been brought up before. And it's a matter of do we get new accounting software? Do we buy a budget module? So it's been looked at. But we can continue this later on.
Well, all I'm asking is that this, since this has been a discussion in the past, that I don't see any reason why we can't, really look into it and see what's out there and available. I try to look at the school budget portion of it. They have a summary which, to me, is easy to follow. You look at some other communities have, in addition to this, if the public wants this, they can get a full summary from every department on one 14 by 18 sheet of paper, double-sided, as a quick summary to what each department is taking in and paying out. And we don't have to go too far for an example. Just looking at our current school department, they have an easy format to follow. So that's all I'm asking, is that we look into this and see if this is something that we can achieve in the near future.
Does the school department work on the same format that we have, or do they have a different format?
They're different.
So could we potentially adopt their program?
We could. We actually, I had recommended in the past that we buy the same software that they have.
Oh, okay. Sounds
Any
simple
questions?
enough.
If it pleases the council, I think my item's next, and it probably dovetails nicely.
It does.
We don't have to have Malcolm sit down and then come back up. Malcolm, you and I have actually discussed that system and the limitations of that system, and then kind of what you're forced to do by way of spreadsheets, Excel, et cetera, in the past. So to your point, Councilman Morado, I definitely look forward to working with the mayor's staff and trying to come up with something that makes sense for the city, something that helps you present both to the public so that they have transparency and to us so that when we're making decisions, we have the most updated information, right? We're not acting rashly or without all the info that we need. To that end, have we considered, I know that the school department, by state law, if it's not federal law, has to use the Uniform Code of Accounts, right? So they're a UCOA agency. Have we considered doing something similar on the city side?
There was talk about doing a UCOA for the municipal side, I think at the state level, but I'm not sure it really went anywhere. When we got the new accounting system in, what I tried to do is in the UCOA, it's 32 digits long, I think, and they have like 5 or 6 segments. And the last segment is really the object. It's a 5-digit that tells you 51110 is salaries. And so what I did is I tried to go in, at least on the object, replicate what the UCOA had, at least for the object. So I saw that out there. I thought we may be moving somewhere towards that. So I went through the UCOA book and tried to align our descriptions with their object numbers.
I think I don't want to speak for the council. I would be very interested in moving that forward, Malcolm. Whatever we decide is going to be, the code of accounts or what we're going to use going forward, and certainly trying to, work with the mayor and work with the rest of the council and trying to find funds so that we can get a system in there so that you don't have to, do what you're doing, on an annual basis with all of those spreadsheets. And I think that would only, behoove us. So I hope that this conversation will continue, because ultimately what I want to get to is, you see the kind of the level of the roll-up detailed reports that the school committee gets from the school department finance. And those were really crucial to the school committee to making good fiscal decisions. I think that we want to make decisions on the same level. I don't think that we want to make mistakes. So I think it behooves us to talk about, how we can get that information to us. I know you've provided us with all with the budget, and I thank you very much. What I'd be looking for, kind of on a month-to-month basis, when we get together for council meetings is, all right, here's what, we budgeted, and then here's where we're at from an expenditure standpoint. Because really, without that information, it's very difficult for, if the mayor comes to us and says, hey, I want to potentially move money from here to here, it's really difficult for us to make a good decision along those lines. Do you think that that's something that we can get to in a timely fashion? Or?
So I'm glad you touched upon that, Councilman Cahoon, because that was number E, my wrapped in finance. No.
This will dovetail into what you said. So.
Yeah, right. We're doing like a little domino effect. We're hitting each other's pins right down the line, which is perfect because that's what we're supposed to do up here. So previously, and much like the school committee, which I think that is great, the school department has always provided monthly reports to keep you guys abreast of what's going on, what the spending is, to know where the money's allocated. And I think that it's fundamentally something that's important, especially on our end. We did at one point have some quarterlies reports a couple of years ago, but that depends on who requests it and doesn't request it. So I think moving forward, I was going to suggest a quarterly, but I certainly, if it is doable, a monthly is even better because then it keeps a tighter watch on what's going on with the budget. And do you have the?
Yes, you want to take like one packet, pass it down. I made 7 copies.
Because per ordinance, after I believe
2 each.
90 days, line items within a department are subject to be reshifted. So that makes a big deal come the next budget year if things are getting done. One of the concerns that I had last year was projects that were budgeted for and then never came to fruition. And then 3, 4, 5 years down the line, that money still held up in that line item, but it's never gotten taken care of. So being, I think, on a month-to-month, us seeing and then having the mayor's office having a discussion with those department heads, is this going to be something that you're going to be taking on, or is it not, and then moving that money and appropriating it into a different place in the budget that would serve its use better. So that, like Mr. Cahoon, Councilman Cahoon said, that would be my request, to probably have a monthly if we could.
And I'll go over this briefly and explain some of this, but the first 2 pages, it's just a summary. So each department has one line item, and it gives you the original budget, month-to-date, year-to-date, encumbered, which are purchase orders, and then remaining balance. Now, the first quarter ended on Thursday, so I didn't have time to go in and do what I normally do. I just wanted to give you an idea. And so what I would normally do is, if you look at the last column, it says percent expended. And if you look down the column, normally it's somewhere between 18 and 22%. So I would look down, and the first one that would strike me would say, oh, it's the mayor's office because they've only spent 2%. But again, they've just taken office. So that makes sense. The next one down, it says city manager, 92%. Well, we only budgeted for like 2.5 months. So that's why they're almost completely spent. Another one that jumps out is the human resource. And, that one really jumps out at you because it looks like they're already $675,000 overspent on a budget of $559,000. Well, what happens is they pay the health insurance to the monthly health insurance bill to the trust, which is about $600,000. So when they pay it, it hits their account for $600,000, but then we have to allocate it. We go in and allocate it to all the different divisions. So, and they also had another, they had to preload the high deductible insurance plan for the fire department, which was another $300,000. So that's why it looks like they're so far overspent on that. And normally, I would have already done this when it got to you, but since the last day of the month was Thursday, so I'm trying to go through kind of what I go through. One other I'll pick out is, if you look at the, is it refuge? Yes. And it looks like it's expended 86%. But if you look over at encumbered, the purchase order is for $1.8 million, and that's because we've outsourced that. And so with MTG, and we put a purchase order in for the whole year. So that's why it looks like it's almost all spent. We've encumbered the money. We just haven't spent it because we pay that monthly. But that's
like an accrual.
Right, exactly. And then the next section gives you the detail of every single department or division. So if you wanted to know what makes up the $30,000 in city council, if you go to the next page, there are 15 line items that show you what the budgets are. And this used to be presented to the manager. So what happened is somebody in finance would send this information to the manager, and they would send also to the departments, so everybody knows where we're at. That should have been forwarded on to you. It could have been an oversight.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Councilwoman Souza, is it all right if I just...
Oh, of course, please.
Malcolm, how long does it take you to put this together? Is this something that's fairly quick, or...
This is really just to go ahead and hit print, but, I really want to go through and make sure the numbers look reasonable before I send it out. So, we could give this to you, like the charter says, I'm supposed to send it through the mayor to the council, and but this could be done monthly or quarterly.
This is something that maybe we could put in our packets for, monthly council meetings then? Is that...
I don't want to... Okay.
Okay.
So in the charter, does it read for quarterly
Or
monthly? Monthly.
Through the mayor.
Okay, through the mayor.
So,
All right,
and what I would then say is then for the second meeting of each month. And the person that was doing this has been out for going on 2 months, so we're actually a little behind in this also. But
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate you bringing this forward.
Okay.
I just have one more question. So to implement one of those models, how long would it take? What would be the, to get that going if they decided to go with the model that Nate, Councilman Cahoon was talking about?
Oh, if you were putting in a new accounting system, there are different modules. A lot of those would have an HR and payroll component. So it depends on how robust you want to do. Up in Pawtucket, theirs is going to take 3 years to install. But, they've got tax assessing, tax collecting, and so they've got all of the suites. But generally, for the accounting piece, it would be 3 or 4 months. I think normally they say, they'd like 6 months in total, start to finish.
So my question would be, how long would it take to get a module or a model that we would all understand, basically? Is that something that could be done for the next fiscal budget? Or?
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you.
I have one more question, if I may, Mr. President. So I know that in the past, and I'm speaking from the school side, I know we've always kind of found it a challenge to, we would communicate our budget, and we think we were submitting it early, but there would be additional considerations on the city side that we really weren't privy to. Negotiation of various contracts, whatever the matter might be, right? So sometimes we would submit our budget, and other things would need to get taken care of before, we could start having a discussion about our budget. I think, I point at the school because it's our largest department. It's where most of our money goes. I think it would probably be of value for us to have some sort of, I don't know if it's a council subcommittee on budget. I don't know what that group might look like, but maybe a subset of the council with a couple of the right folks from the finance department, certainly yourself, Malcolm, and maybe, one department head at a time to kind of go through that department and say, okay, this is where you guys are kind of tracking. This is what it looks like historically. This is what you're thinking might be coming up in the next year, maybe 2 years. So we can kind of start talking through that. And then when we sit down in August and September and we have to make hard decisions, that group could report back to the council sort of regularly and say, hey, this is what it's looking at from, Public Works, or this is what you might be hit with Parks. I think that would be of value. What do you think?
I know in the charter it says it used to say the city manager, it now says the mayor has to present his budget to the council 45 days before. And so you're looking at September 15th. That doesn't mean that we couldn't start it a lot sooner than that. And I know some of the bigger concerns that you may have are the capital, and that's done beforehand, and that's run through planning. And so that's done earlier, along with probably in the same time frame that the school is done, because you normally have yours done, the school used to have theirs done by summer, end of summer.
Now, that's a new thing. I mean, it's really only with the last few years that the school's gotten in that habit, to be fair. So, you know, I know that there are timing issues here. I know that it's a lot of work, right? And I know I'm putting this in the, hey, Malcolm, do you want more work kind of category. But ultimately, I think what I'm trying to do is make something easier for all of us to work through at the end of the year rather than, you know, I mean, we're all pulling our hair out in those October meetings, you know?
And you could start earlier. It's just, this is, per the charter, this is the last day to do these.
Last day.
And with the new form of government, I'm sure the mayor has some ideas on that. And, you know, he's only been here a month, and there's a lot going on, but I'm sure as time gets closer, and he's already, we touched on it briefly earlier today when we had lunch, about things that we need to do, and he mentioned about budgeting and something being a little more user-friendly. He likes the idea of being able to, this is pretty static, it's a PDF. He'd like to be something a little more interactive that you can click on and drill down. And so he was thinking along the same lines that you were.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to take a stab at maybe, you know, drafting an ordinance. You know, we'll take a few months to work through this. We'll certainly work it out with, you know, the mayor's office and the appropriate members of the staff to maybe establish that body, right, for the council. It's something that they have in other municipalities. It's something I think that we've lacked for a while. So I'm going to take a look at that and maybe bring a couple of drafts to the mayor, to you, Malcolm, you know, to the council, and maybe we can come up with something that works for everybody, and we can get going. Now, we're in year one, as you put it, right, Malcolm. We're in year one of this, right? We don't have to solve every problem right off the bat, but I think if we can make some incremental progress, that would be a good sign.
Yeah. It's funny how you mention this, because Councilman Roderick has just mentioned in my ear here that this is something that we should form, and maybe you want to elaborate on that.
Well, I just mentioned that, you know, the Councilman Cahoon, you mentioned the conversation should continue, and it should, but it's difficult when we just have conversation at council meetings, and the work isn't getting done. So I think maybe the subcommittee, and you happen to use the same words, if we had a couple council people, or at least one person, and can't put everything on your shoulders, but with your planning and budgetary background and your schedule, if you're able to chair a subcommittee, and it could be a floating committee. It could be one member go to one meeting another time and another member at another time. It's because, as everyone knows, we can't have three of us. There would have to be a full-blown public meeting. So maybe a subcommittee where no votes are taken, but you could put together this proposal and come back, and then we can have the further conversation. I'd like to see, as long as he's still available to us also, to have our fiscal advisor, Mr. Luba, have a piece of this puzzle, because I'm sure he has seen other programs in other cities and other rubrics and things that we could look at to change, because it is difficult to follow. We do want to follow a model that you've been close to. So I don't know if we're ready yet to put it into a motion. I will if we want to, but I think a subcommittee led by Councilman Cahoon, and then you could invite one member, all of us take turns to sit. Mr. Councilman Morato, you had initially talked about, I remember months ago, you talked about clarity of budgeting. So I think maybe the two of you could start, and then Councilwoman Souza and myself and the president could chime in along the way. So if it's appropriate, I would at least make a motion that we establish a budget subcommittee, keep it separate. It's not appropriate, our lawyers saying.
Not appropriate.
Okay, I take it back.
Also, if I may, I want to just clarify.
But he can at least do some budgetary work and report back to us.
Absolutely, but to form a specific subcommittee of this committee would have to be posted properly. And
okay, that's right.
And I'm all for
So,
that.
as per charter, as it stands now, submit to the council through the mayor a monthly statement of all receipts and disbursements in sufficient detail to show the exact financial condition of the city. So as it stands right now, we can request a monthly report from my finance director through the mayor's office. And that's kind of what Councilwoman Souza and Councilman Cahoon are, that's part of the discussion on this topic tonight, so.
And from my perspective, what Malcolm produced would fit that bill. There's a lot of detail there, but that's good. The other thing a subcommittee could kind of investigate is, I know, Malcolm, that, there's been some kind of extenuating circumstances on the most recent audit that we've completed, which I believe is for FY16. And thank you for providing me where I could get those. But certainly reading through those audits, now I have a background in this, and I went to sleep. Right? And so it's kind of, it's not really realistic to expect folks without financial background to look at those and understand what they say. There are 100 and some odd pages. There's loads of detail in there. I think that's something that maybe, a subcommittee could kind of take a look at and say, all right, what do we need to tell the council from here? Here's where the council needs to put their priorities. This is the stuff we need to track going forward. I think that would be of value to you as well.
Yes, and historically, when we get the audit, at some point in time, they would come in and spend 15 minutes and kind of hit the high point. The auditors would come in and kind of hit the high points of, there's a lot of, I don't want to say filler in there, but there's a lot of notes and a lot of charts and graphs, and so normally there's 4 or 5 pages that are really of interest, and it really talks about where the city general fund is and where the school general fund is.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the heart of everything in the city, it comes through you, right? I mean, you touch really every single thing in the city, and if we don't have the right focus on our finances, it doesn't do you any good. It certainly doesn't do the city or the taxpayers any good. So I think we ought to make an effort to get that straight.
And the key is to get you the information you need to make the decisions. And that's
Right.
what you want out of it. It's as simple as that.
And in addition to that, I think going forward, what it does is, come the budget time, it transitions well into the budget. I don't think we have to spend as many hours or as many meetings, because I think it will just flow right into the budget at that point in time. So, any other discussion at this point in time?
Nope, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Moving forward. I think there's a lot to be said about having small subcommittees to tackle various issues or projects so that we don't have to have these long, drawn-out meetings that kind of go around in a circle and at the end don't come to fruition. And this will be able to vet things out more in detail, see what each department's looking for their next fiscal year, and then with the mayor's office come up with a plan that would take us less time in the process of the budget season.
And the mayor's got 4 years, right? So the mayor now is looking at a strategy.
Right.
It's not like 2-year election cycle,
right?
You're out, you're out, you're out. There's going to be some planning. So this will allow us to put the proper planning in place for that.
Exactly. Good. Thank you, Malcolm, for the information.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
That concludes, items B and C. If
And E.
Councilman Cahoon has no further discussion on his line item, and moving right along. Next item, please.
That would be D. We're going to go back to D, council rules and regulations.
So as a follow-up to our meeting, the previous meeting that we had, there was a discussion on council rules and regulation, one of which is what we're going through right now. We changed the time. So our new executive session that we'll be meeting is going to be at 6:30. We'll be out here for the public meeting at 7 a.m. Then there was some discussion about proclamations. What was the other thing we had? Proclamations, public comment, communications, and anything else. And I'd like to finalize that if we can today, so going forward we can have that in writing, and just, finalize everything at this meeting with the discussion, or if there's anything else that needs to be inclusive to what we had last meeting. And just to catch Councilman Roderick's up to speed here is, I don't know if you had the opportunity to read or see what the previous meeting on this discussion was, but we talked about moving the meeting up. We talked about perhaps proclamations, citations done through the mayor's office. It was suggested by Councilwoman Souza to have that with the during the council meetings. We also talked about public comment and communication and how that's going to be shifted and how and what we could do about that as well. So,
Sounds good.
I thought about some of this. I don't mind, as you talked about, having proclamations and citations here at the meeting. It's perfectly fine, and as long as everybody else does agree with that as well. Then there was a discussion on public comment and communication. The way I like to see with communication coincide with the docket items. So when someone comes up here for communications, it coincides with what the docket item is. Right now, communication is you sign up a week before the docket or several days prior to the docket being released. So when you come up here to speak on communication, you're certainly not going to speak about docket items because you have absolutely no idea what the docket items are at that point in time. So somewhere along the lines, if we could move communications up, I don't know how we can do this, but if we can move communications up maybe even afterwards so people have the opportunity, like public comment, and they can come up and share their thoughts, their concerns, and we can have an exchange between those who want to approach the podium and question whether it's an ordinance or otherwise in communications. So is there a possible way that we can do this? Have communications maybe as public comment? So
Sure.
that people come up?
So if I understand you correctly, you want to give the public an opportunity to comment specifically on things that are on the docket?
Exactly.
So when the docket gets posted 48 hours in advance, I guess we can have two sign-up sheets. We could have two types of communications. General communications, somebody wants to just complain about trash pickup or anything, whatever they want to complain about, or suggest, I should say. And then anything particular on the agenda, we could have like two sign-up sheets so they can sign up for that if that's the council's pleasure. So you could have one limited to general discussion and one limited to just items on the agenda.
Or could it be one communication and one regardless of what the individual wants to come up here and speak about? I mean, if they want to
Could be anything that you
communicate.
want.
Right now in public comment, and I don't know if this is, can you investigate this and look into this with respect to public comment? Because as far as I understand, public comment is person goes up there to speak and we as a council are not able to respond.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's, okay. So with that being said, I want to be able to give the public the opportunity to communicate with the council based on the docket items.
So you could, when I say you can't respond, you can respond, you just can't take any vote on something that someone might bring up to you from the public. So you are able to respond, but we really shouldn't get into a big dialogue back and forth on what the person wants to talk about, unless it's on the agenda. If someone who wants to talk about something on the agenda, then you have a lot more leeway because it's on the agenda. Everyone gets notice that it might be discussed, and you can have a very free-wheeling discussion with a member of the public on that agenda item. Mm-hmm. It's really on those non-agenda items that becomes problematic.
So when we discussed this at the last meeting, my thought and suggestion was that public comment would be subject only to docketed items. So those coming forward could, much like today, come forward, speak on any ordinance resolutions that were on the docket, maybe any appointments, how they felt, they would express those feelings. That way there wasn't really an actual conversation that was going to need to take place unless maybe a department head needed to come forward to answer a question because they certainly don't, it's not in the same, right? They could come up and speak without having any issues, as opposed to us having a major dialogue. The communication part, I think, is important for those who want to come to the council and bring other items forward that are not on the docket, which they wouldn't know would be on the docket because it wouldn't be posted until Friday. So say if somebody has a concern with coyotes, they could come and put that on the communication, and they would be able to communicate that with the council, and then we'd be able to have a verbiage with them that wouldn't be.
But they can do that now, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Okay.
But public comment, as it sits, it's a free-for-all, so it's whatever you want to talk about, whether it pertains to the docket. It
You
doesn't
want to
pertain.
specifically
I think
gear
it should
towards- okay,
pertain
I see.
to docketed items only.
Now, will the council have an opportunity at that point in time to respond?
Yes, if
to
it's on a
those?
docket
So there
item
will
only.
be a dialogue
Correct.
between, okay.
Correct. There might not be a decision be able to be made.
Now,
Yep.
right now, we have public comment under 3 minutes.
That's up to you.
So we would have to expand that, because now if you have a dialogue going back and forth, you can't sit there because the question itself, it could last for 3 minutes.
That's up to the council. I'm not suggesting that you do this, but there's a misnomer that you have to have public comment. There is no requirement under state law that a public body such as this have public comment at a council meeting. I know most councils do, but this is your meeting. This is a meeting for you to get city business done. So when public comment or general comment becomes too onerous that you can't get your votes in, you can't get sometimes it becomes a problem. So that's why you have the ability, and it's a good idea to limit.
And I understand that, and time could really, with the time constraints we have, could really manage that. However, I think the public has a right.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, good, bad, or indifferent, they should be inclusive to whatever's on a docket item, or as a taxpayer or a resident, you should be able to speak.
I'm not suggesting otherwise. I just wanted to let you know.
No,
what the
I
law is.
understand.
Yeah.
Right. No, I
I'm
understand.
certainly in favor of public comment.
We could always set the rules such that, I mean, obviously if there is a lot of interest in an item, and the whole city shows up to speak, we don't want to give everybody too much time, because we'll be here all night, right? But if there are only a few folks showing up, maybe they can have a little bit more time. I mean, I think maybe there's probably some leeway in there we can work into our rules based on the number of people who show up, sign up. The time is X minutes.
I think in the charter, it does say something to that extent where if don't quote me verbatim, but there is something in the charter that you can't go over 10 minutes. So if the first 10 people have the same, you have the discretion of changing some of the
30 minutes.
Yeah,
exactly.
30. That's why that was sticking in my head.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I know Councilwoman had suggested to keep the proclamations and citations in the meeting. I don't have an issue with that at this point in time. If anybody does, let me know now. Otherwise, we'll just keep that in. We've already switched the time, and I think the only thing we need to really finalize, and we don't have to do it this evening, is the public comment and communication. Let's think about that, or if you got an answer to it, it's...
Could I just comment on, while you're on that topic, this city has a unique, tradition of swearing in witnesses, which I have never seen before when they give public comment. Most public comment it's an opinion, right? We're not on a fact-finding investigation. We're asking residents to give opinions. And I looked at the rules and I looked at your charter, and there's nothing that I can find that requires you to swear in the witnesses. So I'm just putting that out there. It's a little awkward, to be honest with you, because people think they get, I got to swear to tell the truth, but I'm just giving my opinion. You're giving opinions. You're really not giving facts.
Well, I don't mind striking that.
It doesn't exist anywhere. It's just more of a tradition. But if you want to continue that, that's fine. To the extent that this body would become a fact-finding and do an investigation of, say, of a department, and we're taking witness statements, that's different. Then you certainly have the ability and should be swearing in witnesses. But if Mr. or Mrs. Joe Public are coming up there to talk about the police ordinance or a 5K road, there's really no need to have them sworn in, because they're just sharing their opinions with you.
They're just stating their name and address.
Right. And then after that, it's all there.
Yeah.
Should they state their address as well?
Well, I think it's important for the record. They don't have to, but...
I think that's how we were doing it before.
We were,
I don't think we were doing the swearing in, though. We were just doing the record,
All right.
the name and address.
I mean, some people get intimidated by that. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
Okay.
I've been up there a bunch, and you've never made me swear in when I was up there before. So.
Any other?
The only other thing that I wanted to hit on, which Councilman Rado had mentioned, I think is a great idea. I think we should remove licensing and public hearing up higher.
We do have that, yes.
Okay. So that way we can get licensing business done and out of the way prior to all the rest of our discussions.
So going forward, if we can just put that up on the docket, move that up.
Mr. President, the rules changes that you're talking about, is this requiring a vote tonight? Or did you already do that?
Well,
Or it's just an announcement?
It's an announcement, and I guess we could put it all together and vote on it.
We'll have to put a final resolution together incorporating all these changes. The only thing we did vote on last 2 weeks ago was the time change.
Okay.
And you can change these rules at any time. There's nothing magical about them. So
Sure.
So keep the time, keep the proclamation, citations, and I don't know how we want to proceed going forward. If we want a little bit time to think about that, public comment and communication, we can do that going forward. But in the meantime, we can make the changes that were discussed this meeting and last meeting with respect to time and proclamation and citations.
I'll do a little research and put together a proposal on the public comment.
Sure.
And give it back to the council.
Very good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. No other discussion? Next item, please.
Non-utilization tax to combat vacant and abandoned property. Councilman Breaux.
I put this on for discussion. It's already an ordinance that we have in the city. And one of the things that I was looking at is the city of Providence. The city of Providence has a non-utilization tax that combats abandoned property and vacant property. And I asked the city solicitor to look at this and research this with respect to having our own ordinance here. And unbeknownst to me, we have our own ordinance. Unfortunately, it isn't, it's not enforced, essentially. So going forward, I'm going to ask the mayor's office, the city solicitor, that in the city of Providence, they have what they consider to be a 10% 10% of the assessed value is being charged to the homeowner. And usually this is property that's abandoned. It's been neglected for some time. I've been receiving calls on this lately. I've received calls on this in the past about property. And we had a property in Ward 1 off of Treon Street actually for about 2.5 to 3 years. It's probably just sat doing nothing. And I received nothing but calls on this. And at the time, because of the property owners abandoned the property, the bank wasn't notified at that point in time, or the bank couldn't make any changes at that point in time to the property. Although they had the first lien on it, because of their rules and regulations, the bank was unable to do anything about the property. So the property, the grass in the front grew extremely high, the grass in the back grew extremely high. They had a pool. The pool had some water. Unfortunately, wasn't drained in the summertime. It did nothing but attract critters. And this became a nuisance to the neighbors because it became a hibernation place for rats and rodents as well. So with this being said, I'm looking and hoping that going forward, the city could start identifying these properties. And these are properties that essentially are left abandoned. The homeowners are not involved with it. They took off for one reason or the other. And I want to have the city start really reinforcing this ordinance that we have on the book.
Mr. President?
Please.
If I could add to that, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Violations of property, abandoned properties, and I think we'll have a remedy. I know in talking earlier on with Mayor De Silva, some of his judicial appointments, which I would take a second right now because I was not able to do so before publicly, but congratulate you on some very meritorious appointments. I think we're going in the right direction with all of your appointments so far, and I know you mentioned a couple of the judicial appointments had some deep experience in this area, so I think with those appointments, with the, I don't know if it's the municipal court or the other judge, but it's about time that we start, following up on that. And I know at least we did have some promise from the mayoral appointments that this will occur, so we might solve some of those problems right there.
And believe it or not, I mean, there are a lot of abandoned properties in Ward 1 off Greenwood Avenue. It's becoming a nuisance to the neighbors in the area there. It's total neglect. And it has an impact on the surrounding neighbors. And I think addressing this issue, enforcing these, and I don't mean by enforcing them, send them a citation, send them another 20-day follow-up, another citation. I really think that we need to, pay closely attention to the properties that we have in this city and start doing something about it.
Am I able to come up and speak on that?
Sure. I think, Malcolm came up, so.
I just wanted to expound on it. I had spoken to the assessor's office and to solicitor to see if we can come up with a plan to address these issues. I also spoke to our minimum housing investigator, Gene Savory, who, by the way, is he's a part-time employee. regarding those particular issues. So we are trying to put together a plan. It's not, it's a little more complex sometimes because there's a lot of different nuances to the law, but it's something that we can definitely do, and it's something we're going to look at to handle. I'm in 100% agreement with you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
So just a quick question, is that an additional 10% impact?
The city of Providence has, the assessor value, they charge the homeowner 10% of the assessor value. So I don't know if it's, I would just think it's just the value of the house, 10% over and beyond the value of the property.
I don't know what Providence is, but I think your ordinance is, I think it's $10 per $100 of assessed value. So it's $10 for every $100. It's very onerous. It's a very onerous tax. $10 per 100 assessed.
What's 10% of $100?
Yeah, I guess. That's why I'm a lawyer, not an accountant.
Mr. President.
No, thank you.
If I may, and I don't know if I'm completely ignorant to any similar ordinance or other ordinances like that. Is there a similar provision or thought for a similar provision for commercial properties? Properties that were once leased to, a commercial entity.
It applies to both residential and commercial. The trick is that you can get out of the tax if you can show that you're making substantial, and there's a language in the ordinance that mirrors state law. This is all enabled by state law. If you can show that you've listed the property, you're making efforts to sell the property, then you can't impose the tax. But if you're truly just letting it sit and not, and not doing anything, not marketing it, not doing anything, and then you can go after the commercial, residential. But some of the big commercial, and I have some expertise in this because we did use this in Woonsocket, but some of the big box stores, that they leave, and but they're under contract for with a real estate agent, and they can prove that they've actually showed it a couple number of times over a couple month period, and so you can't impose the tax. It's a little harder on commercial, but it applies to both commercial and residential, and that's what your ordinance states.
Okay, I'd be very interested in looking at that. I mean, I think that you can envision a situation whereby a commercial entity would have an interest in keeping that property vacant.
Right.
And certainly that does no one any good other than that particular entity. So
that's true.
That's something I'd be interested in.
We have that in Ward 1 as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So, if you can indulge into this a little further, or we can really start.
Sorry, Council President. We did have a meeting with the tax assessor in the mayor's office and the mayor, and we're beginning to look.
Okay.
But the important thing is it's important to keep very good records on behalf of the city. It has to be totally abandoned for an entire year, for a 12-month period, January 1st to December 31st. And so if someone happens to move in there for like 6 months or 6 days during that period, you can't utilize the tax. So it's a lot of record keeping that goes along with it.
Go get him, Sam.
Okay. Mr. President, please. Let's ask our attorney, how about middle of the road? Someone, a commercial property or a personal, maybe they can show they're trying to sell or do something, but can't they cut the grass? Can't they clean the place up a little? I mean, I don't want to mention names, but I can think of some key places and some key entry spots into neighborhoods where there are abandoned tractors and grass growing through the engine. And I mean, okay, maybe they can show they're trying to sell and trying to do something, but I'd like to see us start enforcing, cut your grass, paint the place, pick up the trash, move your walks, shovel the walks, move the abandoned vehicles out of there. Okay, you can't sell it, but clean it.
Yeah. So this was an issue last year, and I remember having multiple meetings with Mr. Savory and the city manager. And the problem, there's a step in the process, so it's a notification for 30 days, and then you have to wait another 60 days to 90 days and send out another. So it's a very long, then it's a whole year before somebody takes action, because then they can bring it to municipal court, fight in municipal court. So
not easy.
No. It's easier just to grab your lawnmower as a nice neighbor and cut the grass.
But we can change that, right?
I don't know how we can shorten up the...
I believe the minimum housing code at the state level sets these time frames.
Okay.
So we have to follow state law.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on this?
And that's just to show that I know Mr. Savory, even though he is part-time, he has a handful with the whole city going through and doing all of this. And I know that he has been out and he has been sending notifications. And then it gets, it gets to the point where it comes before the municipal court judge. And I don't know where it ends there. If there's a fine, if they cut it. I know the city has on multiple occasions gone in and cleaned up the area and then placed a lien on the property for that maintenance. It's not ideal because now we're utilizing city workers that could be doing something else, but it's an ongoing.
Yeah. And the whole thing is abandoned property, so, I mean, regardless of what citation they get from the city or, the housing authority, trust me, they're not going to pay it either way, so I think something needs to be done about it, especially as we approach the summer months. We're going to see some of these properties with, knee-high grass in the front. Okay. With that being said, next item, please.
Licenses requiring public hearing, Laundromax, 2271 Pawtucket Avenue, East Providence, 02914. Application for additional hours license, 1 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Good evening. I come before you this evening for an application for extended business hours for the Laundromax at 2271 Pawtucket Avenue. We've currently been open for approximately 1 month. We occupy 9 other locations in the state of Rhode Island, which are 24 hours. I just wanted to give a little explanation as to why we request a 24-hour business license or a extended business license, and that's basically to allow us to do extensive cleaning and preventive maintenance throughout our store. We do thorough cleanings throughout the dryers and washers, more importantly the dryers, to prevent fire hazards and such, and also to help eliminate any extensive damages that may occur during like the winter months of freezing pipes and such. I'll give you an example. We have a store in Revere, Massachusetts that had very, very cold weather. We were shut down for 2 weeks, which is, has a huge impact on our business. We would have been shut down for a whole lot longer had not someone been there to be able to turn off the watering system or the main water main to shut that system off. When we're closed for that extended amount of time, we would not be aware of that and would have come into a more disastrous situation. The other thing that we like to do while we're open those extended hours is to offer the community to be able to come and do their laundry. We don't have a lot of customers that typically come in on the overnight, but some of those customers that either work a second shift, third shift, or some people just don't like to be in the laundromat when it's packed. We tend to have a pretty busy laundromat, especially after we ramp up, and therefore it just allows them to be able to come in and peacefully do their laundry without having a lot of customers around. I've done a lot of communicating with the customers over the last month. I am the regional leader for the Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut market. I have Mark Sobelman here with me in the back. He's our district leader for the particular East Providence location. We do a lot of communication with our customers. We ask for feedback, especially in a brand new store when we're ramping up. We want to get the community feedback and just to see what we can do better for the customers. One of the We've received several categories of, feedback from the customers, but a lot of our customers that know us, we've been in the state for over 15 years in some of our locations. They know us to be open 24 hours a day, so they were asking why, we're not open in the city of East Providence 24 hours. Some of them have, expressed that they would come and, do business with us in the middle of the night. Again, that's really not our main concern. We're not looking to generate a lot of revenue in the middle of the night, more so than the safety and preventive measures that we like to take in our stores.
You had talked about additional hours between 1 and 5 a.m. for cleaning and maintenance.
Well, we do cleaning throughout the day,
Right.
but our stores, obviously with the dryers, and typically speaking, we're a very busy store, so we do thorough cleanings. We remove every single lint screen from each dryer pocket. It has to be cleaned thoroughly, not just the lint screen, but the vents internally as well. We have to clean behind the dryers. We do this to prevent any kind of lint buildup or any additional, dust that may be found. The challenge with doing it during the day, especially in our locations, I'm not sure if you're familiar with our business model, but we're pretty busy. And so, if we're to do a really thorough cleaning during business hours, we're really in the way of the customer, and we can't really do that thorough of a cleaning because you would have to mark down like which dryers you actually got to, and then by the time you clean them, someone reuse them again. And so what we like to do is just go through with very limited, interruption, and to really be sure that they're actually effectively cleaning the machines, not just, zipping through because the customer is waiting to put their clothes in the dryer, because we still want to provide that excellent customer service as well.
But I don't think you would need a license to do cleaning and maintenance.
We don't need a...
So this would be to be open to the public then?
Right, that's what I was saying. We do a lot of our cleaning throughout the middle of the night, but it would just be an added bonus to be able to have the community be able to come in and do their laundry like all of our other locations that we have. The other thing it does, too, is, in speaking with neighboring businesses, in other locations, not necessarily here, we've only been open a month, but, the other neighboring businesses really do like that we're 24 hours because there's a lot of, interaction going on in the middle of the night. It's another set of eyes and ears, just to kind of see what's going on in their businesses that may be not open at that time.
Now, you came in front of the council, several months ago as well?
Yes, we did.
The early fall?
I'm sorry?
Was this early fall that you came in front of the council for this?
Yes, we had to request, obviously our regular business license. We also went for extended hours as well. I think that initially we didn't provide probably the proper communication or the examples that I had set forth today, just to kind of explain what we do and why we, do the 24-hour business model.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it's not on for a vote. Is that what you're looking for, a vote?
Well, last time they said that we couldn't have the extended business hours, that I'd have to come back, so this is what I'm here for.
Mr. President, can I ask a question? Is the place staffed all the time?
Yes.
So if you're open those hours, there will be staff in there?
Absolutely. We're staffed. The other thing that I didn't mention tonight, I did mention at the last meeting is, we provide a pretty safe environment, not only to our staff members, but to the community. We're a cashless system, so we don't accept any cash. We actually have, pretty much a couple machines. We're on a card system. We have a state-of-the-art camera system. We have panic alarms. We have 36 cameras. We all can remote in at any time, and so it helps not only the staff but the customers that are in the store as well feel safe.
So at no time during those late hours would customers be in there and no supervision, no staff?
Absolutely not. We're staffed 24/7, at least with one person. In most instances, more so on the weekends, we would have a double coverage. Usually on the overnight it is one staff member, but that does change according to business needs.
To the President, if I may.
Please.
I noticed in the presentation that you gave us, you indicated that you've never closed a store in 20 years. Is that...
Meaning our business model, we've never gone out of business.
Yeah.
So any store that we've ever opened, we've never closed the doors unwillingly. We've sold businesses.
Sure.
Right. So just to kind of give you a little bit of back side of this, we have 25 locations in New England. 10 10 of those locations are right here in Rhode Island. We have 2 in Connecticut. We're just opening a new store in New Hampshire. We have 11 locations in Massachusetts. We also have another 35 stores in New York. We're a New York-based company. We just also expanded to Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. So we're the largest laundromat chain in the country, and we've been open for over 20 years. So our business model is very solid.
Is that business model in those other locations predominantly 24/7?
Absolutely, yes. We have a couple of locations that, because of the demographics or just the geography of where they are, it's not really that safe to stay open 24 hours. So we do close those doors, but that's a very, very limited amount. I think there's probably three or so in the company.
Do you have to call the cops a lot when you're open late at night?
Believe it or not, no. Typically, when we have to call the cops, it's when we are very busy and we have some customers in there that just don't know how to properly utilize the machines and they don't know how to share, and they want to take up more machines than necessary, like a dryer. They'll take a load of clothes, maybe toss it in 3 or 4 dryers when they really could do it in one, and there's customers waiting. So there could be some interaction between the customers that we have to kind of pull back on. We try not to have to involve the police. We try to handle it professionally and try to get them to understand that we all have to share, but not necessarily. I have stores. This store has actually been a blessing so far. Great community. They're really loving the store, and we're loving them as well. I have stores that we barely have to see the police, and that's in like Broad Street in Providence and like the Washington Park area. We run a pretty tight ship. The expectation is very high for us with our staffing as well. They're very well trained, and they know, just what they should do in a circumstance like that. Am I going to say the police never have to come to our locations? I can't say that. That wouldn't be true. But it's very limited.
You did a beautiful job in the store, by the way. It looks great.
Thank you. We love it.
Mr. President, please. Can I ask Attorney Marcello or maybe Clerk Burnett, why is this here? Do we have an ordinance against these hours of business being open that late?
Let me take that. Okay. So with the application for additional hours, that does need to be put before the council because it does deviate from what we currently have in place. So that's the reason why it's here. There was a formatting error on my part. This should have a motion block on it. It should be voted by the council, and that's why it's here before you.
Okay.
Council President, this is a public... Yes. This is a public hearing, so you could...
Yes.
For or against the application.
Sure. So, again, this is a public hearing. Anybody willing to or would like to speak, please step up to the podium.
Brian Coogan, 169 Grosen Avenue. I want to thank Councilman Morado for moving the licenses up. There was some neighbors here tonight against the extended hours because they asked me to pass the message on because I said I was going to stay for the whole meeting, but I'm not for or against it. I live on the street, but I live further down. But the neighbors that abut it, they say that people are cleaning their cars out there, emptying their ashtrays. The later it gets, the more the clients change. One neighbor told me that somebody was arguing. Another neighbor who showed me some pictures tonight, and I didn't want to take them, but they were supposed to plant some shrubs. They're 17 feet apart or 13 feet apart, and they look like Charlie Brown Christmas trees. There's only like 3 of them, and the lights face his house. And he has his window, I forget exactly what he said, but the lights are facing his house, and, there's people loud, they're playing music, the windows are down, the doors are open on the warmer nights when it catches a warmer day and night, and he feels that it's only going to get worse. And that abuts a beautiful neighborhood. Them people that take care of those houses, it's beautiful over there. There was one gentleman who really didn't want to come up and speak, but there are neighbors that are against it, Again, I'm not for or against it, but that's for the council to decide. Okay. But I think they need to be a little bit, they need to reach out to the neighbors a little bit more and see how they can work together and maybe in the future give the extended hours. But as of right now, the weather's breaking and they feel as though the warmer it gets, the more people are going to be congregating on the parking lot where they're waiting, they're smoking cigarettes, they're throwing cigarette butts. And again, I didn't witness it. It's what the neighbors had told me, and asked to pass the message on to the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other person willing to come up and speak for or against? It is a public hearing. However, I know, I'm sorry?
Could you speak on behalf of that?
Yeah, respond.
Can you speak on behalf of the...
Sure, absolutely. So as far as the Charlie Brown trees, I am absolutely in agreement with you. We're actually in a little bit of a debate right now with the landscaper. The trees are absolutely horrendous, and what's even more horrendous is what we were built for it. So that is definitely something that we are taking care of. Secondly, as far as any neighbors, I've yet to, I'm not going to go knocking on neighbors' doors. I mean, I don't think that's really something I should be doing. However, if the neighbors were to come over and voice that they had any concerns, we certainly would take care of that. We plan on being in the community for a long time, so we're not trying to make anybody upset. As far as lights shining over into their yards or their area, I'm trying to think. We have a pretty big back parking lot, and I'm trying to think where the closest neighbor is. I'm off the top of my head, I don't know how many feet it is, but if it was something that they are, affected by, and they came over and voiced that to us, I've yet to hear anything. I don't know if I haven't heard from Mark giving any feedback that we've had any neighbors come over complaining. We certainly would address that. Their outside lights, we want to make sure it's well lit for not only our staff members, but for the community as well. As far as cigarette butts and loud music, I have not heard any complaints about that. I was there the other day. As a matter of fact, I was letting the staff know how nice the parking lot was kept clean, because it's very important for us to keep a nice outside just as well as the inside. As far as landscaping, it's obviously winter. We're going to be working on the landscaping. We're looking at doing some landscaping in the front and the side of the building as well. As far as the loud music, and I haven't experienced it, nor have I heard any complaints. So, that is something that we could definitely, take a look out or be on the lookout for. We try to be very professional, and we try to, be nice neighbors, friendly neighbors. And so, our staff knows that if there are customers out in the parking lot, which we don't tend to have happen, and like I said, I haven't experienced it yet, to the extent that this gentleman was stating, but that's something that we would address. We don't want people bumping music out in the parking lot, throwing cigarette butts, not only for the neighbors, but for our property as well. So that's something that, that I think would have to be handled on a case-by-case basis. I can't prevent people from putting their radio up.
Well, again, unfortunately, it's not on for a vote this evening, so we can't vote whether to approve due to a clerical error.
No, I think it is on for, she just didn't put the block. Yeah. She just didn't print the block. There's a license for public hearing.
Right. All licenses for requiring public hearing always have the motion block. It was a formatting error.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask one, do you own the property, or do you lease it?
I don't, we are leasing the building.
Okay.
Typically, we do like a 20-year lease, so we're going to be around for a while.
Yep.
And, like I said, we do want to be friendly neighbors to all. And so, we don't want any issues, never mind having our neighbors have issues. So, if whoever those people are, if you happen to know them personally, if you can reach out to them and have them, I can give you my business card. They can call me directly, and, I run the whole region. So anything that anyone has a problem with, if they want to give me a call, I'd be more than happy to help, resolve any of the issues that we could do. We could resolve for them.
President, I think in the spirit of and the theme of that many of us have talked about, trying to be a business-friendly city, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't try to go ahead with this. We certainly have dealt with in the past things like loud music and trash, and we have a police department we can call to respond to it, and if there's a problem, we could certainly address this issue. I mean, I haven't heard, I appreciate Brian's concerns from those neighbors, but it doesn't sound earth-shaking to me. I think it's something we could fix if it's really happening, and I think if we want to remain business-friendly, I'm not hearing anything here to try to stop this. I mean, we don't have a lot of businesses open that late, ever since our famous Coney Island across the street closed several years ago. But I'd be willing to give this a try, and it can always be revisited, and we have a police force that we can count on, I'm sure.
What's the term of the license?
It's annual.
It's annual. So, I mean, we'll be revisiting this in a year anyway, right?
My concern, and I expressed my concerns the first time they came up about having businesses open at that time especially. And you're saying now somebody will be manning this? Someone will be there?
We always
Retire?
have, anytime we're open, it is manned. We are not an unmanned, we don't have any unmanned locations. 24 hours a day, we're staffed. 7 days a week, 365. Like, we never are not staffed.
And if I'm not mistaken, we had a number of the other laundromats that came out and spoke against this the last time you came up here as well. I had some reservations before. I have some reservations now. About those type of hours. I think again, cleaning and maintenance is. You could do cleaning and maintenance at that time anyway. You don't need a license for it. I think essentially the cleaning and maintenance is excluded from this. Is just to be open for the public.
I can share my opinion, President.
And I just have some concerns about, possibility of people coming out and just starting to hang out there at certain times in the morning, early part of the morning. And I think I expressed a lot of my concerns about this the first time that they came up.
I'm for business, business friendly, bringing more businesses into the city. However, this particular establishment is really close to homes. I have a concern about that also. And being that it's not a revenue generator that they're looking for, it's more of a convenience. We already have someone in the establishment from those hours maintaining the machines, and they're just looking to keep that open. Me personally, I don't really see a need for that with this particular establishment. It's just my opinion.
Well, I think, as Gene has mentioned, this is the business model. So unless you only have 3 locations that don't currently have...
Currently in New England, we have 1 location. It's in Roxbury, Massachusetts.
That does not...
That we close at 1 and we open back up at 4 a.m.
Because of the area. And I used to work in Roxbury, so I'm very familiar.
Yes.
That neighborhood, I wouldn't want to be open either, or working there. So essentially, this is a laundromat that's now currently in its first month established, and it looks amazing. I drive by there quite frequently. The concerns of the neighbors, I wish I had heard something prior. I didn't get an email or a phone call, and it could have been during the time when my email wasn't working, so I apologize for that. I think it's important that you reach out, maybe we have a meeting with the neighbor, reach out, give your card to that neighbor so you can have a dialogue with them and maybe give them some reassurance of I've never noticed it to be overly packed or busy or people lingering, but again, I don't live across the street from it, so I can't speak on their behalf. I do think it's good to have businesses in the city, much like Councilman Roderick said, business friendly is something that we need to be and do, and I'd hate to have you to change your business model just because the city of East Providence doesn't want to conform to what your business model is, but we're saying come to our city and do your business, but we want to set stipulations on how your business model is. I don't think we're in the business of telling people how to run a business or what works for their company or corporation. That's not what we do here on this panel. I'm not opposed to it, provided that the neighbors are contacted, there's a discussion, they feel comfortable with it. Again, like we mentioned, moving forward, all licenses, regardless what they are at the discretion of the council and can be taken back. So if in a situation there is something that the neighborhood is not happy about and that is brought to the attention of the council, we certainly have the right to revoke that extended time, just moving forward knowing that.
Absolutely. We've actually done that in the city of Cranston when we opened our first location. They were a little apprehensive as well about opening 24 hours a day. We have a location at 1025 Cranston Street. That location's been open for now almost 3 years with no incidences, other than occasional, like I was just saying, a customer fighting over a machine or such. But, I mean, I understand where the president's coming from with, being able to clean and stuff. It isn't a huge revenue generator for us, but we are paying the staff to be there, so we might as well try to make a little bit if we can. On the flip side of that, like I said, I'm unaware of any of that, and I'm not. If it happened, I'd sit here and tell you it happened. The district leader for that particular store, because it's a new store, is in that store quite frequently. He's in that store at least every other day with the new staff and it being a new store. And I've personally been in that location at least once or twice a week since it's open. I've never gone in. I always look at the outside because I want to make sure that that's something that's not only pleasing to the eye, but that we're not doing some of the things that this gentleman had stated. And I've yet to have any. I've never pulled up and had any issue of any of those things happening. Again, could it happen at night? Obviously, it could, but it could happen anywhere.
Mr. President, one last question from me. Doesn't sound like, I'm not hearing between the lines that there is a lot of business happening during these late hours.
There's not.
Do you find this would be a hardship to your business if you were not granted this?
Well, I think what we would have to do is we would probably just end up having the cleaning done a little bit earlier, possibly when we open the doors, maybe in the earlier hours of the day. We'll cut back somewhere. It'll just have to be an adjustment to, like Councilwoman Souza said, our business model, which we try to keep it consistent throughout. That we have a lot of people that transfer between positions. We just kind of like to have consistency throughout our business model, and really that's all we're looking for.
But if this is your business model, then knowing that the ordinance here in this city, that we don't allow businesses open during that time, or for laundromats, I should say, I don't understand how, or why you would. I mean, you're welcome, obviously, and we welcome businesses, but with the idea that you're coming here for 24-hour services and your business model is we do 24, but yet we're going into a city that doesn't operate on those type of license.
So that actually wasn't, that message wasn't relayed to us when we first went to apply for the license. I personally went to apply for the license here, and when I was talking to, I believe it's Kimberly, I can't think of her last name, and then someone else at the business license department. We actually had placed the ad previously for the 3 weeks before the public hearing, like everyone is required to do, only to find out that now laundromats are not part of that ordinance. Nobody relayed that to us. It was like everything was good to
But
go.
you're in a 24-hour laundromat business. Wouldn't you do that yourself? Don't you do the legwork yourself?
I did. I went down.
this is what you do all over. You do this all over pretty much the East Coast.
So I came to the business licensing department, and I asked all of the questions. They told me that it would be fine. I applied for the license, the extended business hours. I paid them the $300 to post it in the paper for the 3 weeks that's required, and then came before and was told that the ordinance did not allow it. So I did as much as I've had to do in the past, and unfortunately I relied on the information given from the business licensing department.
Okay. I would just think that you would have a set of guidelines going, having the experience from municipality to municipality, that you would have the experience of not only going in and asking, but also reading up on it.
Well,
and checking up on it.
We definitely learned a lesson here, but typically when I go into a business licensing office and ask the questions, I rely on the experience of who's working there.
I know they usually provide you with a paper, and they usually sometimes even highlight the area of what the hours are or otherwise.
No.
That may be a concern of yours. In this particular case, it was obvious, and you made it clear that it was a 24-hour business, and they still told you That it was clear? There was no...
They allowed
No
me,
issue?
they told me I had to pay a $300 fee.
For your license?
For the license, no, for the extended license. They said you just have to pay $300, and it's posted 3 weeks before the hearing. That's what I did. It was at that time that I actually was told that I wouldn't have to come to that initial hearing, the hearing that you were referring to, that people were from City Bubbles or from neighboring laundromats, which I believe it was City Bubbles, that they came and opposed that. I was actually not at that meeting. I was told that I didn't have to go to that meeting because they were voting on the ordinance. That meeting was the meeting that happened directly after the 3 weeks that I had posted, paid the $300 to post. They said not to come, so I couldn't even defend or to even speak about the extended hours license.
So what meeting are you referring to? Because you were here one of the meetings. You were here
Yes,
for
it was the meeting
vote.
after that. It was the meeting after the ordinance was adjusted, apparently, because when I was initially told to apply, they didn't see that there was an issue with the ordinance. It wasn't until after I already paid the $300 and they posted it in the paper for 3 weeks that they said that the ordinance wouldn't allow a decision to be made and that the ordinance had to be revisited.
So why wasn't this mentioned the first time then, when you came up and spoke on behalf of the 24 hours?
Why wasn't what mentioned?
What you're telling us right now?
I don't understand.
What you're telling me about your licenses for 24 hours?
Yes.
How you was under the impression that you could apply for a 24-hour license? You never mentioned this the first time you were here.
There was no need to mention it because they had told me that...
It was a vote that we had that evening, so I would think that you would mention that. We voted against it that evening.
They had told me that they had to adjust the ordinance, and then Stephanie Mello from the city clerk's office emailed me and said, you can go to the next meeting, I'm going to put you on it. They adjusted the ordinance. She had told me that I can come to the next meeting. So I came to the next meeting, and basically all I did at the last meeting, which there wasn't really, there was no vote on it. I was just stating the same information that I stated to you this evening regarding what our business model was, why we would like to stay open extended hours. Nobody voted on it that evening.
But there was a discussion not to open it for 24 hours, so you saw what direction it was going in at that point in time. And I would think that would be a segue for you to say, listen, I was told by paying the $300, and now I'm shown that the $300 was and is a advertising fee, not...
It was advertising to say that we were...
It's an advertising fee that you pay for, not to extend the hours, the $300.
I think you probably paid $600.
I paid, yes, I
Okay,
paid
you didn't say that. You said
$600. I
$300,
paid
that's right.
$300 initially
Okay.
when they told me that I didn't have to come because the ordinance was not up to date. They were changing the ordinance. That was the first $300. Then after I applied again, they told me to pay the $300 now that the ordinance had been adjusted and that I can come before the board again. So that's why I'm here tonight. So I paid $600.
Just advertising.
Just in advertising.
So just to speak on behalf of the clerk's office, the $300 that was paid, if you look, the council hall has the application. It's an application for additional hours license, and it's in line with the RIGL's 376. And then what's checked off is the advertising fee. It's $300 payable upon filing. It's to be advertised 3 consecutive weeks. It was paid twice when it's put before, and then it's put before the council for a vote, because it does deviate from the regular schedule of the businesses and things like that. So it's not necessarily for the license. The $300 covers the advertising fee, in which we did twice also. So that's what it covers.
What's the 125 for?
The license.
That's just for the basic, just the license, the business
annual.
license.
Yeah,
Yes.
the
So
annual.
you paid $725 in total?
Yes.
For advertising, 300 each
Advertising
time.
plus the license app.
Yeah, 300 each time.
Yeah.
Both were advertised by the city clerk's office.
Yeah, the license fee was $125.
Yes, that's
not
correct.
the $300.
Right.
Okay.
300 is just advertising. If you look on the application, it says right there, advertising fee, and it was done twice. And 125 is the general
And
business license.
just to correct too, this is an additional license fee besides the original fee to be a licensed business in the city. So there's a lot of licensing that goes on. So this is to be extended hours in the city, whether it's a laundromat, a drugstore, a restaurant, a tavern, whatever a dog pound, you have to, the city's charging an extra $125 for those extended hours. So that's kind of, at the pleasure of the business, whether they want to spend that annual fee for their operation. I think maybe this would be an easier, maybe to suffice the council more, maybe we do a 3-month probation, approve it, see in 3 months how it goes, and then if, the council feels okay, keep moving forward for the year. Did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, we had advertised this for now 6 weeks, 3 in 3 weeks, and my understanding was the advertisement was to get the information out to the public, so if they had any kind of feedback or any kind of, concerns, that they would be able to come here and speak like this gentleman spoke on their behalf. But none of those neighbors, whether they stayed or didn't come or whatever the case is I believe that's why we are required to.
I just think personally, and I'll just make it very quickly, that just sets a bad precedent for opening up between those hours. And I said that before the first time you came up, and my decision stands as it did back then as well. So it is up for a vote. Any other further discussion at this point in time prior to a vote? We had the public discussion already.
I don't think you closed it, though.
Okay. Please.
Sorry. Technically. No, he just has to say.
Make it quick, please.
I always do.
Tom Riley, Pawtucket Avenue, Riverside. I'm going to suggest to you folks that within 500 feet of this laundromat, which faces directly onto Pawtucket Avenue, which is a highway, you've got 2 drugstores that are open 24 hours. And while I'm sympathetic to the folks whose property abuts a commercial property, I believe that in fairness, considering all the licensing fees and advertising fees, et cetera, that we've charged these folks, that we ought to give them a fair run at it for anywhere from 90 to 180 days to try it out, and maybe they need to make some adjustments to which way their lights point, fencing, et cetera, to where this is amenable to their residential neighbors. But by the same token, when you purchase a property that abuts a commercial property, there's certain things that go with it in that you're abutting a business. And I understand that we talk about being directly across the street. It's in back of it on the other side of the street. So to make adjustments to the direction of the lights so they're not shining into someone's front yard, or perhaps to change the lighting so that the direction can be better handled. We've had this done with other businesses where there's been complaints about lights shining, and it's been able to be favorably done. But I think we owe it to the business to at least give them a try, and if there is a problem, to do something with it. Because from what I've seen, the only complaints or objections that we've have received has not been from the neighbors, but from business competitors, which I think is an unfair precedent to allow one competitor to testify, and they're way far away from them. Bubbles is down at the junction of Broadway and Warren Avenue. But that none of the abutting neighbors that I have seen, and I come to these meetings, you all know that, has gotten up here and said, well, we don't want this because. so that perhaps it is, once again, in a sense of fairness, why the license should be issued on a trial basis and looked at in 90 to 180 days. And if there is a problem, hey, guess what? You can't do it anymore. So that's my suggestion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. With that,
I'm sorry. Lord knows I don't want to go against a councilwoman, but my feeling is let them get through the summer, see what happens in the parking lot, have them come back after the summer. Because the neighbor outside was adamant how, it's a growing concern about people congregating in the parking lot. So instead of giving it's easy to give something, but then hard to take it away. So instead of giving the 3 months probation, get through the summer, talk to the neighbors, get the shrubs in, put the fence up. I mean, the gentleman that was here, all the parking spaces face his house. So people pull in, I-beams on. He's got children. He'll be back. They should go approach him. He shouldn't have to approach them. And talk to the neighbors. Get through the summer, and then give them the license. Instead of giving the license first, and then try to take it back.
with that being said, public comment will be closed. I stated my concerns, like I said, the first time they came up, and I stand by my decision I made then and now. At the pleasure of the council, Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote? Now, hold it. What's a motion? First of all, before we vote on anything, what is your motion that you would like to have, Councilwoman?
Well, I didn't make a motion. But
No, I'm asking you, what motion would you like to make? You made a suggestion.
I made a suggestion about having a probationary period, right? If she was up, that was an option. My concern, obviously, like I mentioned, is you speaking with the neighbors, talking to them about this. We discussed this before too, that it's important that the community feels okay with it, and I think having that outreach is important. I also think it unfavorable that we've been charging you over and over for these fees and these licenses, and that we're just throwing them away. It's not good for the city. It certainly doesn't attract a good thing for businesses.
But if I'm not mistaken here, we didn't charge them over and over. They paid for an advertising fee.
Twice.
Was it at their request?
Right.
Yeah, it was at their request.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So $300 for, what was that for? The first for 3 consecutive weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was an additional 3 weeks that was added on to that as well for.
Yeah.
So that was.
Like part of the business.
I don't think we charged them for that. I think they requested that.
So,
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, we did request it.
Okay, so we didn't charge you.
But we requested it under the instructions from the city clerk's office that we would be able to, be presented or be able to come here for the extended business, and then was told after we paid, after it was presented 3 weeks, that no, we couldn't because the ordinance had to be changed. So that first initial time that we paid the $300 was pretty much we were told go ahead, and then we were told no. So yes, we went ahead at the recommendation of what we thought was going to be able to come before the board, and then they said no, the ordinance was changed. I mean, at the end of the day, I hear like a lot of feedback. Thank you for talking on behalf of our business, but I think that I understand we all want to make sure, including ourselves. I don't want to get phone calls in the middle of the night, nor does anyone else, that something's going wrong at the location. A probationary period, I would ask that you would grant a probationary period, maybe 3 months, 6 months, whatever the case is. But with that being said, as far as the neighbors, I would certainly like to know, who these neighbors are. I can try to reach out to them, maybe mail them a certified letter, maybe they can come over and communicate with us if the word can get back to them. We obviously want to do what we can for our neighbors. We're not going to want to shine lights in there. We have a construction crew that came and built this laundromat. We can look at the lights at night and see if we can turn them a separate way. As far as the music and such, that's something we would, just came to our attention tonight. We didn't know we had an issue with it. I've not experienced it like I stated earlier, and we'll just have to make sure that they're aware of it and looking on the outside, to make sure it's not happening.
Mr. President, if I may, we've discussed this for about 40 minutes now. I'm prepared to make a motion to move forward, and I'm prepared to move to approve a provisional license for a 90-day period to be revisited come 90 days from now. We can take a look, see if we want to continue to extend that license or approve a further license. But for now, I move to approve a 90-day license for the business.
Okay. Well, Councilwoman, you had discussion on this, and I wasn't sure if you were going to make a motion as well. Is that acceptable to you?
If that's the motion that the councilman would like to make, then that's fine.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Mr. President, I'll second the motion. I respect the President's opinion. I wasn't here for the beginning of that process with the last council. I respect what you're saying, but I have to look at it this way. We have a business who is given some instructions from the former city clerk's office. This business is paid in excess of $725, it appears so far, for a combination of advertising twice and an actual license. The two advertisements did not produce a lot of people to come forward. I appreciate, Mr. Coogan speaking on behalf of them, and that's fine, but they have a responsibility, too, to come forward and to say something, and none of us have heard anything about it. So I can't see why we would pose a roadblock for this, and it's a probationary period of sorts, so therefore I second Councilman Cahoon's motion.
Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Brito.
Nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
And just for the record, we can put down the 90 days or whatever probationary period.
90 days
From the issue of the license, yes. Next item, please.
New business, mayor communications.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of council. Just wanted to come up and speak on a couple of issues. One of the issues that I'd like to speak on is the police recruitment process that we are preparing to undertake. And just to give you a little history of some of the issues and challenges facing law enforcement, not only here in Rhode Island and East Providence, but also throughout the nation. Back in 1993, when I first applied to be a police officer, we had well over 1,000 people that were applying at a time, okay? And they would all have an opportunity to go through the process, and once they got vetted, they'd establish a list and hire from there. For whatever reason, societal issues, public pressure, public perception, the numbers have dwindled down significantly. Here in East Providence, in the last recruitment process, which was in 2016, we had 134 people apply, only 134. During the two last recruitment processes that we had a recruitment process in 2014 and a recruitment process in 2016. Out of those people that applied, we hired 25 new hires. 12 of those people didn't make it to, and they're not here today. So 12 of those people either resigned to go to another department or failed the field training evaluation program. We retained 13 people from two different hiring processes that started in 2014. During that process, in the 2016 process, of the people that made the eligibility list, 12 of them were disqualified for one reason or the other through background checks by the police department, doing their due diligence, or offers were rescinded. In the 2014 selection process, 9 people who had made the final eligibility list were withdrawn or disqualified because they had issues with their BCI. Means they had some type of arrest previously, but they were able to apply. Okay. But what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that our police department does an incredible job of vetting potential police applicants, okay? Not only do they go through a very intensive background check, but they also go through a field training evaluation program. Now, let's look at this. 2016 to now, we had 4 people that did not make the FTO program, 4 officers. So that means they made it to the background check portion, they made it to the police academy, but once they got onto the field where they were being trained by another officer, they didn't make the cut. And our department did what they had to do to part ways with them. We had one person who resigned during the academy, but the thing that troubles me the most, and this should trouble all of us as taxpayers, is that there's a cost associated with this. Okay, if you look at the total cost of sending them through the academy, going through the process, paying them during the time that they're going through the training, it comes out to a significant amount of money, $154,000, okay, for just that one recruitment process in 2016. So I got to credit the police department for doing a fantastic job in evaluating, assessing, and removing those people that they feel are not capable of doing the job. They're very capable of doing that. But the problem is that we all face around the nation and here in the state is low numbers of people interested in applying. And this applies to every different community. So we are planning on doing some type of a hiring process. I know that the ordinance change that we had previously had on the docket for discussion is being tabled until we can hopefully discuss it further or sit down with the union and the police department to further discuss the issues that they may have with it. And once we get that all fixed and in order, we're hoping that we can present a new ordinance and get some passage. Ultimately, I feel that we have one of the best, most professional police departments here in the state of Rhode Island. I really do. They do an incredible job. We are the 5th largest community municipality in the state, and we have the lowest crime rate. That's due to the due diligence and the hard work that the police department does. However, there are serious problems with recruitment. People just don't want to do the job. And I think that we as a community should not be putting up roadblocks to make it more difficult for people to apply. Let me give you an example, and this speaks to the recruitment ordinance change. So currently, under the existing ordinance, if a person has been arrested once, twice, 10 times, maybe even arrested with a felony, but never taken a conviction or never taken a guilty plea, and they don't have a conviction on their record, by ordinance, they can apply. They can apply right now. Now, what's going to happen? They're going to be one of these 12 people who got disqualified during the background check, or they're going to be one of these 9 people in the other process who were disqualified through a background check. And that's exactly what happens. However, if the police department vets an individual who's been arrested for a misdemeanor in the past, currently, the way the law is now, you can have a person who's been arrested in the past with a misdemeanor charge. He can apply. The police department then does their due diligence and decides whether or not they're going to give that person a second chance, a chance of becoming a police officer. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that that has been the case. And it's happened. Okay? So when I came with the idea of making some changes to the ordinance, I went over to Councilman Murado and asked if he would introduce the bill for me. So whatever political heat he's taken, it's all on me. That was my ordinance change that I wanted, and I asked him to introduce it for me, so I really want to thank him for that. But the issue is a fundamental issue of fairness. What's right, what's wrong? Okay? You get a person who is a young adult who makes a mistake at 18, 19 years of age, gets arrested with a misdemeanor, takes a guilty plea because he doesn't know any better, doesn't have access to legal or good legal representation, or it may just be a college kid who's afraid, doesn't want mom and dad to find out about it, doesn't want it to drag on. They take a guilty plea, they've got a conviction. That person who has that conviction, even though it happened when he was a young adult, will not have the same opportunity to apply as the person who had multiple misdemeanors or even a felony dismissed and never took a conviction. So there's something fundamentally wrong with our ordinance where you're going to block people from applying who otherwise should be able to apply to be vetted properly by the police department. Let's talk to the other issue on the ordinance, education. Right now, the way our ordinance is written, it states that you can have 60 credits in anything. And somebody mentioned it earlier, it was kind of funny. It said you could be a geologist, 60 credits in geology, or 60 credits in something that has nothing to do with law enforcement, which is great. It's an accomplishment. It shows that they can go to school and they can take classes and pass courses and do well, right? That person can apply. However, the person who came out of high school, went into a trade, maybe had a family to raise, didn't have the opportunity to go to school for whatever the reasons may be. They may be 40 credits in, they don't have the whole 60. They may have 30 credits, they don't have the whole 60. They may be 40 or 59 credits in, they don't have the whole 60. That person, we're closing the door on. We're telling them, no need to apply. So now you've got a situation nationwide where we cannot get good qualified applicants to apply, and we as a city are putting up unnecessary roadblocks. That's what we're doing. It makes no sense why we would do that. Now, why do I speak about this? Because as a police officer for 25 years, I was involved in the recruitment process for the city of Pawtucket. And it used to break my heart when I hear a guy, because we have a 30 credit requirement. It used to break my heart when I'd hear a guy say to me, "Oh, I've got 29 credits. You know, I went to school late because I was raising my family. I've been working a job and trying to balance going to CCRI. It's difficult." I said, "Sorry, buddy, you can't apply. You got to wait another 2 years." So here's the risk you ran with that situation, is he would not apply for Pawtucket. Once he got his 30 credits or got his 60 credits, he's going to apply at the first department that's going to take him. You run the risk of not bringing on some good, qualified candidates. So when I came up with this idea, it wasn't something I just thought about today or yesterday. It's something that's weighed on my mind for many years, where I think that the system can do better. So I spoke to Colonel Steve O'Donnell today, former colonel of the Rhode Island State Police, and I asked him about the state police requirements. Now, the state police require the same thing that I'm trying to change in this ordinance: GED, high school diploma, or no misdemeanor arrests or convictions, okay? So, I'm sorry, you can have a misdemeanor arrest or conviction, just no felonies. That's what the state police is. So I asked him, I said, "Colonel, how long has that been around?" He said, "About 30 years. I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "Why would we want to tell anybody no? Why would we want to tell people that they can't apply? We run them through the process." He goes, what he explained to me is, the majority of the people we hire are all very qualified. They have degrees, they have experience, they have background, but there may be that one person who's been busting his hump, doing something else, maybe made a silly mistake when he was a young kid, but that kid would have the opportunity to apply and go through the process, and a decision made on him. This is why I want to change that. I want to give people the opportunity to come in here and just be given a fair shot. The police department has demonstrated that they're very adept at evaluating and dismissing people. I talked to you about the numbers. The statistics are there. It's kind of incredible, actually, when you look at it. Since 2014, 25 new hires, 12 have resigned or been let go or transferred somewhere else. That comes at a cost. Do I think maybe we can broaden that pool by making these changes? I absolutely do. And I think it's incumbent on us as elected officials to do what we feel is right and not listen to the chatter or the people that have no knowledge about police recruitments or police work at all influencing you what you have to say and how you feel. But that's how I feel about that. I feel that we would be doing something that would have a very positive impact. I'm willing to work with the council to make any modifications. Just to allay some concerns, because I know Councilwoman Susan brought this up, there is a federal law and a state law that prohibits people convicted or arrested with misdemeanors for domestic violence from even being a police officer, because they would not be able to carry or possess a firearm. So that law exists. That law exists. But being a person who's been around for 25 years in law enforcement and having seen some of the arrests that have occurred especially upon people of less socioeconomic means, people of the minority community who are arrested for something that somebody else would be able to beat in court, but they take the plea, and now they're barred from ever trying out. That makes no sense to me. So I look forward to working with you guys, and hopefully we can come up to a quick resolution, because I would like to have a true and honest and inclusive recruitment process so we can get more people in on this next try. I don't want to wait 2 years before we can try to do this again. I don't want to wait 1 year before we have to do this again. So I'm hoping that, I know that we can have further discussion on our own, one-on-one. We can sit down with members of the union. We can sit down with members of the police department. We can sit down with members of other police departments, too, and see how they've done with having these type of same qualifications, and what issues have they had. From speaking to Colonel O'Donnell, and he's willing to come and testify and write a letter in support, he said, listen, it's the best thing. You allow people to apply. Their age is 18. You could be 18 years old, had a misdemeanor arrest, and no education, they can apply. The Rhode Island State Police has a great reputation. Now, what ends up happening is, once you get on the job, you have the option to further your education. And what he told me, once again, I'm repeating myself, and what I saw in Pawtucket, because Pawtucket only requires 30 credits, what I saw is that the majority of the people that were hired had a bachelor's already. So what happens is, during the interview process, during the vetting process, during the oral board panel, they are awarded points for their education, similar to what we plan on doing here in East Providence. So if a person comes before the oral board and he has a bachelor's or a master's, he's going to get points on his oral board rubric. So it's going to elevate him above everybody else. So that guy who doesn't have the credits, doesn't have the degree, he's already going to be, behind the 8 ball a little bit. But that's why I introduced the ordinance through Councilman Morato, and I feel that it's something that would really make the process a better process. Any questions? No?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes.
In an event that a candidate decides that they want to further, or someone who has 20 credits or 30 credits and they want to further their education while they're on the police force, who will pay for that education?
So currently there is a state law that if a person wants to further their education, they would get reimbursed, similar to what we have in many of the contracts here in the city. So you could be in any department in the city, you want to further your education, you get reimbursed. Okay? So there is a state law, and we honor that law because we value education. But what I'm telling the council and the members of the public is that the majority of the people, according to Colonel O'Donnell, because we're following similar to what they have, the majority of the people that they end up hiring have advanced degrees. They have degrees, or they have even master's degrees. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are pilots. They come with credentials. Same thing I can tell you that happened in Pawtucket. Most of the people we hired, even though it was only 30 credits, most of them had bachelor's degrees, some had masters. But I can tell you this from firsthand knowledge. I came up with a lot of guys and girls who did not have 60 credits when we got hired. And they turned out to be some of the best police officers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. I can name a captain, a detective, people who I truly respected, and they came on the job and didn't have 60 credits. But you know what? Those very same officers would not be able to apply here in East Providence. They could not fulfill their dream of becoming a police officer here in East Providence, but they did in Pawtucket, so thank God Pawtucket allowed them on. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one quickly?
Yes.
Where do you think the 60, because a lot of, like you said, many municipalities don't have a requirement. Pawtucket's is 30. But many of the other municipalities in Rhode Island do have a credit requirement, and it's like 60 every single time when they do have it. Where do you think that number came from?
I think it's a twofold. First of all, there was a pushback sometime to increase the educational requirements of police officers. Okay, that was when there were 1,000 people applying at a time. Okay, things have changed. The other thing, I think people look at it as a financial issue. Look, if I get people in with 60 credits, that means I'm only going to have to pay up to 60 credits more if they want to further their education. That might be something that they're looking at. The reality is, I can tell you this again, and it's just, I know it's being repetitive. The majority of the people at these departments that have the same type of stuff that we're trying to pass here, they get people with far greater credentials. They're not hiring people with GEDs and high school diplomas. They're hiring people with bachelors and associates and masters. So you're still going to shine if you have that. But the reason why this works is for that one guy. What about that one guy or girl who is at 49 credits and would be an otherwise incredible candidate, but we're turning them down? How about the guy or girl who's at 59? It just makes no sense. The last process we did was in 2016 of April. That's almost 3 years. Okay? The process before that was 2014. I personally think that with a longer period to apply, we may be able to get more people. I'd love to see us do more robust recruitment. Part of the recruitment thing that I'd like to do is I'm sitting down with HR. I want to set up a public safety recruitment panel. So we have members of the fire department, members of the police department working together in conjunction to go into the community, to go into schools, to go into colleges, to recruit for public safety positions, because I may be talking to you and you have no interest in law enforcement, but maybe you want to be a firefighter. Okay, so instead of us sending the police out to just try to recruit, let's team them up with the fire department and they recruit together, and maybe we get, this one wants to be a firefighter, that one wants to be a police officer. You know, it's just a way to get more people involved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next item. Next item, please.
I just make a motion to move claims to the end of the agenda since we don't have claims available at the moment.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Roderick's.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if we can have a roll call vote on moving the claims up.
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morado?
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Councilman Brito?
Aye. Next item, please.
Resolutions. Resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the services agreement for rescue billing services for the city of East Providence, presented by Councilman Brito.
I defer that to the next meeting. Next item, please.
Public hearing, ordinances.
Excuse me one moment. At the pleasure of the council, if you mind me deferring that over to the next
No.
meeting.
Just push the table.
Okay.
Move the table.
Move the table to the next meeting. Do we have to vote on that?
Mr. President, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
And I have a couple of questions about that contract and format. Would they be best to go to you, Mr. City Solicitor, or?
Sure, yes. So just so the council knows, because we're now in a new form of government, any contract over the stated amount that the mayor needs to execute, I'm going to have the council pass a resolution authorizing him to execute, so there's no confusion as to who authorized who, and we bind the city by having the mayor's signature and the council's approval. So that's fine. To the extent that when these come up on your agendas, you have any questions on them before the meeting or before it comes up, just let me know and I'll be answered.
Right.
But I will say that this did go through the bidding process.
I try. We get the agenda on Friday, get the packet on Friday. There's a lot to review. You know, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is.
I know. Thank you.
Next item, please.
We moved to table. I did a motion. I think we're supposed to vote.
I made a motion to table.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morado?
Aye.
Councilman Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Councilman Brito?
Aye.
Mr. President, I'll move to reconvene in executive session.
No, we got one more.
Oh, we do? Oh, I'm sorry. What do
Item
we-
11. It's okay.
That's all right.
That is public hearing, ordinance's final passage, an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 12 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1988, as amended, entitled Police.
So I sponsored this ordinance, and went up for first passage at the last council meeting. And I'm not against looking into, first of all, I'm going to reiterate my history as to why I support this, and I'm going to explain something in more detail. I'm one of these people that, it took me 6 years to get my associate's degree, all right? I could have been a doctor for the amount of time I went to school for my associate's for. But being that I was married, mortgage, and 2 kids, I had to take one course at a time as I could afford it, okay? And in fact, part of the reason why I became a correctional officer was that they gave 9 credits to unelected courses. That was 3 semesters that I didn't have to pay for. So I did 3 years time to get those 9 credits, basically. So the argument is, how can we, and I've seen this too, by the way. I've been in law enforcement for 18 years. When I first applied, there were 400 to 600 applicants for every opening. But I still tried. It took me a while, and I could only apply to those departments that had a high school diploma. All the other ones were obviously out of my reach. Could not apply to the departments that required 30 credits, 60 credits. So I was very limited as to what departments I could apply to. I work side by side with men and women in my department from various degrees. Some have associates, some have bachelors, some even have master's degrees. And, I don't feel that I'm any different in the performance of my duty as a police officer versus anyone that has a degree. It's good, and I'm glad they have a degree. And, there's different issues with this ordinance as it stands now. For example, if we want to talk about education, then this ordinance as it is, then I think it's wrong that if it's job-related for a police officer to have 60 credits in home economics doesn't qualify you to be a police officer. Okay, so if we want to fix that at minimum, that should be fixed. Okay, I got an associate's degree in criminal justice, but I'm not applying to be an engineer to fix bridges. It's 2 different fields. So with that being said, this process of first passage, second passage, I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it because that's what our democracy is about. So we put this out to the public. We had a first passage. We get the feedback from the public. I loved it. And not only did I get feedback from both sides of both opinions, it actually opened my eyes to other viewpoints that I didn't see and I should have. Like, for example, when someone does get convicted of, get charged with a felony, quite often that gets reduced to a misdemeanor. So with that being said, I feel, and hearing every different side, and I did receive a couple of emails from citizens, talking to police department members, talking to just various groups, I feel that, people don't have a problem really with changing some of the language. It's the way we're going about changing it. So I'm going to refer to Bristol because that's what I know, right? I know the ordinances there. I do a lot of the VIC licenses and stuff, vetting those out. And just for example, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ordinances that speak to from the recruitment process all the way to the FTO process. I'm not saying that they have it right, but if anyone looks at this, it's pretty detailed. And it's pretty spelled out, like, even character comes into question. As I know with East Providence, when they do the vetting process, I understand, I know for a fact that that person that does have that, they may not have had that conviction, but if they have, after conducting a background check, if they have, questions as to their character, they're going to be disqualified. Just as, we have applicants that have those degrees, they also get disqualified. Not necessarily, just because you have a degree doesn't mean you're going to get hired. There's a process there. But I feel with this, we need to slow it down a little bit. We need to bring everyone to the table and have a meaningful dialogue and put forward an ordinance that will stand the test of time. I don't feel like we should be rushing through this, putting a Band-Aid on this ordinance at this point in time. I would like to hear from everyone who has a stake in this, come to the table and actually talk and have a meaningful dialogue as to how we can move forward with this the proper way. So with that being said, I feel very confident at this point in time, Mr. President, that I would like to withdraw this ordinance until, and I hope this doesn't impede the hiring process for now. I just want to add that in there also.
Okay. I don't think it has any effect whatsoever on the hiring process. Mrs. Solicitor.
So the ordinance
The
ordinance that's in effect will remain?
Will continue. Right. Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Would you have, anybody else have anything to say at this point?
No, sir.
Okay. Next item, please.
Now, Mr. Council President, I move to reconvene in executive session.
Well, we need to adjourn first, right?
No.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, we're not going to adjourn and then come back out? All right. So,
I second that.
we started off, we started off out here, moved into executive session. We didn't finish the executive session. One thing I said I want to do is start these meetings on time. So as opposed to it being on your time, we're going to go back into executive session and just finish off our...
Right, just so the record's clear, if you could just read that statute in which we're going to on the executive session, even though it's reconvening, we need to do that.
So, yes, sir. So the statute under which we are convening an executive session is Section 42-46-5A2.
Thank you. And there will be a roll call to reconvene. A roll call to reconvene.
A roll call to reconvene and to adjourn at that point in time.
We'll adjourn after the executive session.
After the executive session, exactly. Thank you.
Nope. Mr. President, we just need a roll call to go back into executive session. We need a vote. Sorry.
All right. Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call to go back into executive session?
Did we have a motion? We had a motion with me?
I moved and a
Thank
second.
you, Councilman.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman.